Chapter 388. Wu Kuang-yun, you. Long Ao pointed his finger at Wu Kuang-yun in grief and indignation as he cried out. However, he saw Wu Kuang-yun's malicious mockery. He never intended to persuade me to surrender. He was playing with me. Long Ao almost collapsed when this thought arose in his mind. I've always been proud of my intelligence. But I've been played so miserably. The enemy troops at the front and the army at the rear burst into loud boos at the same time. This made Long Ao want to draw his sword and cut his own throat to apologize to the world. Humiliation. Extraordinary humiliation. Long Ao had always been proud and arrogant. Moreover, he had never lost a battle. So, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Moreover, it was a heavy blow. His troops were already at the end of their rope. The only thing that could keep them afloat was the prestige that he had built up over the years as the main commander, but the prestige that I've painstakingly built up over the years has been destroyed by the enemy's persuasion. It's over. Long Ao was so angry that he almost couldn't sit still on the horse's back. His vision turned black, and his heart turned disheartened. He almost subconsciously turned his horse around and galloped back to his army. So, this is what the generals who have been defeated and humiliated by me in the past were thinking in their hearts. Long Ao suddenly had this thought at this time. Wu Kuang-yun didn't chase after him. He just urged his horse to stand still. He looked at Long Ao with a mocking smile on his face. He thought, it seems that the method taught by King of Helchu is really useful. Look at this guy. He's so angry that he's half dead, it's so cool. Long Ao galloped back to his army. He saw a lot of doubts, and disdain in their eyes. The army was speechless as they looked at him. He had deliberately lowered his voice when he was speaking in front of the army. It was clear that he was pleading. But the enemy didn't lower his voice. The enemy said that Long Ao had called him father. And General Long didn't refute. The enemy forced him to swear. And he only spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't swear. What does this mean? This means that General Long is begging for mercy. He's begging for good treatment after surrendering. He's even bowing and calling him father. But he's being ruthlessly humiliated. Is this really our Marshal Long? Long Ao felt as if his heart had been struck by a heavy blow as he looked at the silent, doubtful eyes of the crowd. He felt as if a knife had been twisted in his heart. He wanted to say something, but he saw stars in front of his eyes. He opened his mouth and spat out a big mouthful of blood. Suddenly, he felt disheartened, and a sense of death welled up in his heart. He turned his horse's head and suddenly shouted, Wu Kuang-yun, when I was alive, I couldn't eat your flesh, but when I die, I will chase your soul. I, Long Ao, will never coexist with you in this world. As he roared, blood gushed out of his mouth. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and pulled out his long sword. He then shouted angrily, Wu Kuang-yun, wait for me. Tonight, my ghost will come to find you. He brandished his long sword and unexpectedly killed himself on the horse's back. His voice was shrill, as if a malicious spirit from hell had suddenly rushed out, howling madly with endless hatred, causing everyone who heard it to feel their hair stand on end. He was dead, and his blood was gushing out, but his body didn't collapse. His eyes were still glaring angrily at Wu Kuang-yun. His eyes were as deep as a dead fish's, and seemed to be connected to the netherworld. This generation's famous general had finally chosen to commit suicide. Marshal, the bodyguard burst into tears. Marshal. Thousands of people shouted together. They knelt down and wept bitterly. Wu Kuang-yun on the opposite side shuddered. Then, he suddenly burst into laughter. Fuck, I have killed more than 10 million people in my life. You're not the only one who wants to settle accounts with me for revenge. Come to find me tonight. Then, you'll have to line up first. Fuck, you're already dead, but you're still scaring people. Then, he waved his arms and shouted, Long Ao is dead. When are you going to surrender? He wanted to say, you and the others. But he felt that he couldn't say it out loud. So, he had no choice but to say, you and the others. On the city wall, a black robe was fluttering in the wind. Behind the black mask was a pair of cold and ruthless eyes. It was King of Hell Chu. Minister Chu, do we summon these people to surrender or? Tai Bu Tian's eyes flashed as he asked. The general is dead. So, we naturally have to summon them to surrender, Chu Yang insipidly said. Execute Long Ao's bodyguards after they surrender. Execute several generals who are leading the troops. Imprison the remaining generals. Then, break up the troops and reorganize them. This is a new force. I can understand if the generals are killed or imprisoned. But, why execute the bodyguards? Tai Bu Tian frowned. I'm afraid. Now is not the time to think about mercy. Instead, we should think about survival. Survival is the key to the world's hegemony, Chu Yang coldly said. The reason why your majesty doesn't understand is that your majesty doesn't know what a bodyguard is. Bodyguard, these two words aren't in vain. Tai Bu Tian smiled embarrassedly. A general next to him said, Your majesty doesn't command the army. So, it's understandable that you don't understand. However, we can't kill many of these bodyguards with our own hands. Because, as Long Ao's bodyguards, most of them will follow him and commit suicide once he dies. His expression was a little heavy as he said, even if they don't die with him, they will still have the thought of taking revenge before they die. He let out a long sigh. Your Majesty, this is what Minister Chu meant by bodyguard. He paused for a moment and said, the so-called bodyguards are the real hardcore. In other words, they are the embodiment of the word loyalty. Often there is an unstable rule on the battlefield. That is, the basic condition to measure a famous general is to see whether his bodyguards will die for him. How many people are willing to die for him? Tai Bu Tian was stunned. Sure enough, after Long Ao died, some of his bodyguards wailed on the spot and cut themselves with their swords. The soldiers of Iron Cloud saw that the situation was hopeless after they started to surrender. So, they put down their weapons one after another. The remaining bodyguards killed many of their comrades in anger. Then, their comrades fought back and chopped them into meat paste. Iron Cloud's army didn't move. The ordinary soldiers of Great Zhao and the bodyguards of Iron Cloud were fighting a bloody battle. Each of the bodyguards had tears on their faces. They crazily chopped and killed while crazily shouting, "The great commander isn't that kind of person. The great commander isn't that kind of person. You have blasphemed the great commander. You." Such tragic cries didn't disappear until the 3,000 bodyguards were completely buried. In fact, when there was only one person left, that person was still shouting with all his might when he made the last slash, "Isn't the marshal?" This voice was very loud. It seemed to be shouting for the great commander's eternal rest. It was to clear the great commander's name, and to protect the great commander's reputation. It all originated from the unconditional trust of the great commander when he was alive. When everyone misunderstood, the bodyguards sacrificed their lives to offer a final song of praise to the man they were loyal to. The great commander was worthy of our sacrifice. But his voice froze right there. His body was also submerged in the flashes of the swords. Their blood and vigor soared to the sky, just like their loyalty. Tai Butian looked at the bloody scene and sighed deeply. What a pity. Such a famous general died so sullenly. It's a pity. Chu Yang said indifferently, Your Majesty is overflowing with camaraderie. It's undesirable. His words weren't polite at all, but Tai Butian wasn't angry at all. She asked, why? The so-called famous generals have survived hundreds of battles. Naturally, every general has his own loyal followers. When a general dies, many people will be buried with him, and these people are all willing to do it. This is the charm of the general himself. He said indifferently, if he doesn't deserve to be a general. On the battlefield, this kind of thing is too common. Some generals will even deliberately gather some homeless people, orphans, and prisoners on death row as their own subordinates. Because they know that these people have nothing. Even if it's just a smile, they will die for them. What's more, the grace of a new life. Besides, this is a war between two countries and not a civil war within the country, right? Tai Butian asked with a smile. That's right. I understand. The alliance won't pay dividends and won't let the tiger return to the mountain. But, as long as I see such a scene, I can't help but feel touched. Tai Butian laughed and said, because there are so many heroes in the world, but I can't use all of them. Chu Yang was silent for a while. Then, he said, when all the heroes in the world are used by the ruler can only turn them into mediocre people. When the birds are gone, the bow is hidden. When the cunning rabbit is dead, the hound is cooked. Although it's cruel, it's also inevitable after unification. Tai Butian was silent. After a long time, she sighed deeply and said, "That's right." These words were obviously derogatory, but Tai Butian and Chu Yang both knew that this was the way to rule a country. When the birds are gone, the bow is no longer hidden. Who is to be shot at? When the cunning rabbit is gone, if the hound is not cooked, it will only bring disaster to the world. At the very least, it will be an unstable factor. Generals all knew that war was for peace. But when there was true peace, it was when the general retired. The greatest value of a soldier could only be reflected in the cruelty of war. That was all. War needed to raise morale, but peace needed stability and harmony. This was an irreconcilable contradiction to begin with. Tai Butian turned her head and looked at Chu Yang. She said deeply, "Minister Chu, I didn't expect you to have such a thorough understanding of the way to rule a country. Since ancient times, people have used the phrase 'the bow is hidden after the birds are gone' to scold those in power. But hearing it from you today, I realize that although this phrase is unpleasant to hear, it's actually a true way to rule a country. As long as the bow isn't destroyed after the birds are gone, it's already the magnanimity of an emperor," Chu Yang said quietly. Tai Butian took a deep breath and said firmly, "Absolutely not." This sentence was akin to an oath of allegiance. The conversation between the two was a little solemn. After this sentence, both of them didn't speak anymore. After a long time, Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and said, "We can open the city gates to accept the surrender." Tai Butian heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. The battle here has finally come to an end. His face was smiling, but he was thinking in his heart, "We're about to go to the main battlefield, and Neo Chanshan is there. I don't know, regarding the bow being hidden after the birds are gone, this is just my personal understanding." I suddenly felt emotional. Everyone can just take a look. Chapter 389. After Minister Chu took control of the army, he played a small trick. The enemy's 400,000 soldiers took off their armor and surrendered. He ended the battle without shedding a drop of blood. The enemy had reached a dead end. So, Minister Chu had resorted to trickery. But, one couldn't deny that Minister Chu's strategy had no problems. He had acted swiftly and decisively the moment he had assumed office. He had continuously harassed the enemy dozens of times in one night. This had made the enemy panic. It was like removing salt from a wound. He had asked Wu Kuangyun to go out and persuade the enemy to surrender. Wu Kuangyun had a special status. So, he had personally come to persuade the enemy to surrender. Long Ao would have been despised if he hadn't come out. Moreover, he had sent Wu Kuangyun to persuade the enemy to surrender. This had given Long Ao a vague hint, "We can talk." That's because the status of both sides was high enough. Long Ao had reached the end of his rope. Wu Kuangyun's arrival had given him an opportunity to regain his face. So, he had no choice but to go out. Moreover, Long Ao had to go out under such circumstances. This chapter is provided by Baidu Tiebar of the world-defying stage Heavens. Wu Kuangyun would have driven Long Ao crazy if he hadn't angered him to death in accordance with King of Hell Chu's teachings. Of course, Long Ao would have lost his prestige in the army at the very least. There would have been a commotion at most under normal circumstances. But, he would have lost his prestige in this life-and-death situation, and that would have been the end of him. So, Long Ao had committed suicide. The 400,000 soldiers had lost their leader. They had lost confidence in Long Ao. In fact, they even despised him. Moreover, they were in a desperate situation. So, what else could they do but surrender? Even after this incident, they still refused to accept King of Hell Chu's decision. They thought, "I could have done it at such a time." However, this thought disappeared without a trace after they had taken over the army. And, they had seen that Long Ao had secretly ordered people to open up a big slope. This slope would have been completed in half a day at most. If the general's thoughts before Chu Yang's arrival had been to wait for the enemy to starve to death and take advantage of the situation, then these 400,000 soldiers would have flown away right under their noses. That would be like a cooked duck flying away. If things really turned out like that, the generals would probably even have the heart to kill themselves. The generals were drenched in cold sweat when they were talking about how to deal with these captives. Especially the surrendered generals who had entered the commander's tent. They were so scared that they almost pissed their pants. Because Minister Chu had said, "Kill them all." Minister Chu was wearing a black robe and a black veil as he spoke. His eyes were cold and cruel, without the slightest bit of emotion. Everyone was horrified. As the ruler of a country, Tai Butian repeatedly pleaded for leniency, believing that this move was against the harmony of the heavens. However, King of Hell Chu said, "What's wrong with that? Wasn't it just 400,000 people? Since I can smash 100,000 people to death, why would I care about a blood debt of 400,000? Hearing this, all the generals felt their bodies cramp. So, that extremely terrifying landslide that day was also caused by this King of Hell Chu? Oh my God, is he still human? None of the generals dared to say anything. Minister Chu was determined to kill. He even said, "Let them dig a big hole by themselves, then drive them all in and bury themselves alive." Tai Butian repeatedly pleaded for leniency. Therefore, King of Hell Chu seemed to have no choice but to relent under the sincere pleas of the ruler of a country. Obviously he was very unhappy, threatening, he said, "Today is for His Majesty. Otherwise, I will kill you all. But, if any of these captives isn't obedient, I will kill the whole team. If any of them isn't obedient, I will bury all 400,000 of them alive." The surrendered generals walked out of the big tent after the terrifying meeting was over. Their legs were weak. Their faces were pale, and they were wiping their sweat. They were scared witless as they returned to their troops. Then, they ordered, "No one is allowed to act blindly without thinking. Motherfucker, anyone who moves will be whipped." They also explained, His Majesty, the Emperor of Iron Cloud, had repeatedly argued with reason. So, he had saved our lives from King of Hell Chu's butcher's knife. One could well imagine what the response would be like. Chu Yang and Tai Butian played the role of good cop and bad cop. They pacified the captives, and handed them over to Wu Yi. Then, they left behind 150,000 soldiers to guard the heaven-splitting mountain pass, and led 300,000 soldiers to return in triumph to the main battlefield. Whether it was the defending generals or the surrendered generals, everyone heaved a sigh of relief when King of Hell Chu left. They didn't know what was going on. Perhaps it was a psychological effect, but they felt as if a thick layer of low clouds had shrouded the heaven-splitting mountain pass as soon as they saw King of Hell Chu's black robe. Tai Butian was grinning from ear to ear on the way. "Minister Chu, you played the role of bad cop very well." Lian was also doubtful. "Didn't you say that you wanted to surrender? So, why did you suddenly want to massacre them?" Fortunately, Lian's brain worked quickly. Chu Yang tilted his head, and looked at Tai Butian with a strange look in his eyes. "Your Majesty thinks that I'm joking?" Tai Butian's complexion changed. She said while stammering, "Don't tell me, you're not?" Chu Yang smiled and said in a cold voice, "These are merely 400,000 people. There's no harm in killing them. You must know that these captives may become the biggest variable if Diwu Qingru doesn't get defeated. After all, this is the heaven-splitting mountain pass. It's better to kill them cleanly. Once and for all. You don't need to worry about anything." Tai Butian was dumbstruck. She realized that she had broken out in cold sweat after a long while. 400,000 people. You want to kill them, and you want to kill them? Of course, you're going to be the lord of this world in the future. So, killing them all won't have a good influence on you. So, you pleaded for mercy, and I pushed the boat along with the current to give you face, Chu Yang said calmly. Lax. Black lines appeared on Tai Butian's forehead. Lian's face is really big. Tai Longcheng hadn't slept for 3 days and 3 nights by the time Chu Yang and Tai Butian arrived at the main battlefield barracks. Tai Longcheng was burning with anxiety because of the constant reports of the heaven-splitting mountain pass movements. Tai Longcheng flew into a rage when he heard that Wu Kuangyun had left his majesty behind and had run back to the heaven-splitting mountain pass to fight the enemy. He wanted to go there himself. He wanted to chop off Wu Kuangyun's dog head even if the entire front was routed. Tai Longcheng was so angry that he vomited blood. He hadn't been able to eat or sleep well these past few days. Each day felt like a year. Tai Longcheng almost fainted from excitement when he saw Tai Buyutian return. He rushed over to greet her. His old eyes were almost brimming with tears. Tai Butian sensitively discovered that Chu Yang, who was beside her, had already disappeared without a trace. Neo Chanxian knew that he had gone to replace Wu Kuangyun. She felt an indescribable sense of loss in her heart. Chu Yang rushed into Buyutian Pavilion's tent. Based on Wu Qianqian's habits, Chu Yang did not hesitate to find her tent. His speed was extremely fast. It was as if a light breeze had blown by, and he was already gone. He was about to open the door when he suddenly heard a sigh from inside. Chu Yang was startled. He couldn't help but stop his footsteps. His Majesty has returned. Has he returned? Neo Chanxian sat on the chair in a daze. Her heart was in a mess. Neo Chanxian wanted to be the first to run out when she heard that the army had returned. However, she stopped when she reached the door. What if he hasn't returned? What if His Majesty has brought back bad news? What should I do? This chapter is provided by the world-defying stage Heaven's Baidu Tieba. She was worried about personal gains and losses. She didn't dare to move even a step. The truth was right in front of her. She would see it as long as she went out. However, she didn't dare to take this step no matter what. She was afraid that she would cry when she saw Chu Yang return. She was also afraid that Chu Yang hadn't returned, and was dead. She was afraid and hopeful. Her heart was in a mess. She couldn't make up her mind. Suddenly, her eyes darkened. A voice said, "Minister Chu, what national affairs are you thinking about?" Wu Qianqian's body trembled. She didn't dare to turn around. She closed her eyes and opened them again. A slender jade-like hand was about to pinch her arm. Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? Then, she viciously pinched him. It doesn't hurt. Wu Qianqian didn't believe it. She pinched again. It still doesn't hurt. She opened her eyes in disappointment. She said dejectedly, "It's really a dream." Sigh. A voice that seemed to be grimacing in pain said, "Sister, of course it doesn't hurt. You pinched my arm. My poor arm is already purple." Wu Qianqian screamed and jumped up. Her chair flipped over with a bang. She turned around in surprise. However, she saw a distorted face. Chu Yang sucked in cold air and said, "Sister, please, let go of your hand." Wu Qianqian looked down. She saw that her slender jade-like fingers were pinching Chu Yang's arm. She had jumped up and turned around. However, she didn't let go. Moreover, she had unconsciously used too much strength in her surprise. She knew that his flesh had been twisted by 310 degrees. She quickly let go. She didn't know what to do for a moment. Should I throw myself at him and hug him? Or should I pretend that nothing happened? However, Neo Chanxian's eyes were already red. Tears streamed down her face. She felt her heart beating wildly. She was so excited that she felt that it was worth it even if she died at this moment. Because he came back safe and sound. He came back. I'm back. Chu Yang smiled and said, "You were worried, right?" Neo Chanxian smiled sadly. She quickly wiped her tears and turned around. She said, "It's good that you're back. Haha, you've made people worried these days." Neo Chanxian's voice had been very emotional when she had started to speak. She was trembling. However, she had calmed down by the time she had finished speaking. She turned around and looked at Chu Yang. She smiled and said, "You're back. I can finally relax. It's been such a long time. I'm really tired." Chu Yang saw that Wu Qianqian was trying her best to control her emotions. He suddenly felt a lump in his throat. It seemed that some kind of emotion was blocking his heart. He couldn't breathe. He forced himself to control himself and said, "Yes, it's been hard on you." Wu Qianqian smiled faintly and said, "You sit down." I'll go get you a cup of water. She turned around and left. The two of them had been separated for a long time. However, they were trying their best to talk about irrelevant things. They were trying their best to control themselves. They were afraid that they would overstep their boundaries. Wu Qianqian turned around and walked out of the tent. But her small mouth suddenly flattened. Then, she covered her mouth with all her might. Her tears started to flow out violently. But she controlled them with all her might. She didn't make any sound. She walked faster and faster until she finally reached a corner. Then, she squatted down and started to cry silently. Chapter 390. By the time Wu Qianqian returned, she had already regained her usual appearance. Her eyes were a little red, but her whole person looked bright and beautiful. Her style was peerless. It seemed as if a long-lost vitality had returned to her body at this moment. She did not say anything, nor did she do anything. When Chu Yang was not around, she took over his role. She was king of Hell Chu. She was the black robe that intimidated the entire Iron Cloud. She was flawless. She killed decisively for him. She commanded heroes for him. She crossed thousands of miles for him. She used thunderous methods for him. She was resourceful for him. She was sinister and vicious for him. She bore everything for him. No one knew what kind of effort she had to put in to do all this. To be able to imitate a man to such an extent as a woman, she had to have a deep understanding of this person. She had to have an unforgettable impression of this person. However, when Chu Yang returned, she suddenly became the same Wu Qianqian who quietly accompanied Chu Yang, quietly watched him, and quietly assisted him when he was around. She was such a woman. She would never force herself to ask for anything, nor would she get anything. She would only silently wait and silently contribute herself. She was very smart. She could clearly see Chu Yang's daily behavior. Therefore, she understood. Therefore, she did not force herself. Therefore, she would only silently endure and silently love herself. I love you. This is my business. It has nothing to do with you. I never said that you have to accept me because I love you. I don't even want you to realize my feelings. I don't want you to feel embarrassed. If you want to leave, you can leave. But I am here. If you want to go back, you can go back. I am here. But as long as you don't take the initiative to confess to me, I will never take the initiative to say these words to you. Chu Yang, I like you. I won't. I am not afraid of your rejection. But I am afraid of waking up from my dream. Because in my dream, you are mine. After a long silence, Wu Qianqian began to speak. Her voice was very dull. Chu Yang, that second martial uncle Li Jinsong, I have already taken care of him. Huh? Chu Yang was startled. Not only him. There are many people from beyond the Heavens sect. I have already taken care of all of them. Neo Chantian said calmly, this group of people will cause too much trouble in the future. Who knows when they will cause trouble? Once something happens, it will be a big problem. So I might as well clean them all up. Chu Yang's mouth became two big mouths. How did you clean it up? Chu Yang closed his mouth after a long while. He only felt that his chin had almost fallen off. He kept gagging. This girl was really good at pranks. To think that he would even deal with his martial uncles one by one. Wasn't he afraid that his father would make things difficult for him? I wanted to wait for you to come back and clean it up, but I thought that since you have been expelled from the sect, it would be inconvenient. Neo Chantian said lightly, so, I thought that I might as well do it for you. Hey! Chu Yang gave him a thumbs up. You're so thoughtful. Li Jinsong was poisoned because of his woman. It is called the spring and autumn heartbreak powder. In other words, it will flare up once a year. If there is no medicine to suppress it, the victim will suffer for 3 days and 3 nights before dying. All of his internal organs will rot. Second martial uncle had always been dissatisfied with father's decision to take charge of Beyond the Heavens sect. So, the Golden Horse Riders department came looking for him at that time. They said that they could provide him with medicine, and that they could help him take charge of Beyond the Heavens sect. So, he was easily manipulated. Wu Qianqian continued, moreover, he loves his woman very much. But Golden Horse Rider's department only provided him with medicine to temporarily suppress the poison. As for the crystal spirit mushroom, they didn't give him anything. They just left him hanging. I see. Chu Yang nodded. Well, when he was eavesdropping, Li Jinsong had asked those people for the crystal spirit mushroom, but it was to no avail. Then, he remembered that he had once entered the treasury of Golden Horse Rider's department. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It wasn't that Golden Horse Rider's department didn't want to give it to him, but that thing. Golden Horse Rider's department didn't have it. How did you deal with it? Chu Yang asked. Killed him. Neo Chanshan's face was a little sad, I don't know why, but he had a premonition. He chose to assassinate Tai Long Cheng at night. In the end, he was besieged by people from Bu Tian Pavilion and died on the spot. Before he died, he begged father to let go of his wife and son. But, after that woman knew about this, she committed suicide. Neo Chanshan sighed and said, before she died, she said, I don't care if he is a good man or a bad man. As long as he is alive, I will accompany him. As long as he is dead, I will go find him. After so many years, I've really caused him enough suffering. Now that I've reached the netherworld, I can finally stop causing him trouble and repay him properly. If this matter was told by someone else, it might have been an undying love. But when it came from Wu Chanshan's mouth, it was as plain as water. But it still contained a heavy charm. Chu Yang listened and sighed. Li Jianyin was expelled. His legs were broken. I am afraid. Neo Chanshan continued, as for the others, those who should be killed were killed, and those who should be crippled were crippled. They have all been cleaned up. Chu Yang was speechless. Neo Chanshan spoke plainly, but when she did this, she had to endure a lot of psychological pressure. Chu Yang could imagine it even if he only thought about it. I have an idea. Wu Chanshan looked at him and whispered, wait until the war is over. If Iron Cloud is defeated, everything will be taken care of. If Iron Cloud wins, let Father and the others go back to Beyond the Heavens sect and rebuild Beyond the Heavens sect. They don't want Iron Cloud to be consecrated as a national sect. They don't want to hold any positions in the imperial court. Good. Chu Yang was full of admiration. This move of retreating in the face of adversity without any reward was really the best move. I have done everything for you, but I don't want anything. But you are the Emperor of Iron Cloud, the ruler of the world. You can't shortchange us, right? Moreover, I am now the same as you. I am no longer a disciple of Beyond the Heavens sect. Neo Chanshan lowered her eyes. Her expression could not be seen clearly. Why? Chu Yang was startled. Because you will leave sooner or later. So, I will be the king of Hell Chu for a long time. Neo Chanshan smiled gently and added, the king of Hell Chu of this generation. Her laughter was cold and indifferent. It was as calm as stagnant water. She said, you, Chu Yang, are only a passerby. So, you are not the king of Hell Chu. You are the king of Hell Chu for a lifetime. The king of Hell Chu of this generation? The king of Hell Chu? The king of Hell Chu? Such an outstanding beauty with peerless talent would hide behind a black robe for a lifetime? Her youthful elegance and charm would be covered up for a lifetime. Chu Yang's heart suddenly felt as if it was being overturned. He looked at her in a daze. He only felt that his heart was in a mess. Wu Chanshan gently turned her head. Her eyes were like limpid autumn waters. They swept across Chu Yang's face. Chu Yang clearly felt a bone-piercing pain. Then, he heard her say, using your identity as the king of Hell Chu to make Beyond the Heavens sect immortal. Wasn't this your ultimate plan when you supported me in the beginning? Chu Yang felt a pain in his heart. He felt as if the pain had swept over him. His mind went blank in an instant. Iron Cloud readied its troops and horses, and prepared for war. Tai Bu Tian had returned with 300,000 troops. Moreover, the number of troops in the country had increased over this period of time. So, the total number of troops had already exceeded 3 million. Great Zhao had nearly 1 million troops. But, they had lost more than 1 million at the heaven-splitting mountain pass. So, they only had 4 million troops left. Both sides were almost evenly matched. Tai Longcheng's heart had been in suspense for a long time. But he finally felt relieved. Tai Bu Tian and Chu Yang had arrived at Ironcloud's military camp that night. Suddenly, the great Zhao's camp burst into thunderous cheers. It was like a tsunami. It didn't disperse for a long time. It was as lively as the New Year's celebration. Then, a big flag was hoisted high from Great Zhao's military camp. A golden dragon was treading on the white clouds. The two words Diwu were swaying in the wind. The whistling summer wind made a rustling sound. Its imposing aura was vigorous as if it wanted to dominate the world. Diwu Qingru had arrived. It wasn't clear whether it was a coincidence or deliberate. In short, Tai Longcheng, Tai Bu Tian, and Diwu Qingru had been fighting for several years. And King of Helchu and Diwu Qingru brazenly faced each other at this moment. This battle would decide the fate of the world. Diwu Qingru's complacent expression was swept away. His face was as calm as water. He stepped into the commander's tent. His heart was burning with anger. He had received the news that Jin Nankai and the others had been annihilated the day before. This news was like a bolt from the blue. It had thrown Diwu Qingru, who had always been calm and composed, into a mess. He had anticipated that it would be impossible for those three armies to be annihilated. However, he couldn't help but sigh when he heard the report. He didn't say anything. The mountains suddenly collapsed, and the ground cracked. The slanting valley was filled up. Hundreds of thousands of people were buried alive. More than 1 million soldiers were divided into two sections. The outside couldn't enter, and the inside couldn't come out. This is the will of heaven. Diwu Qingru's heart was somewhat heavy. Great Zhao's army was much more than iron clouds on the surface. But he knew that there was a clear difference in the fighting strength of both sides. Iron Cloud was located in the north. So, its people were valiant. Except for a few people, almost everyone could fight on horseback. And they could dismount and fight on foot. As long as there were enough war horses, there would be as many cavalry soldiers as there were war horses. On the other hand, Great Zhao's army couldn't do that. It was located in the south. The climate was mild. And the people there were soft and tender. They weren't on the same level as the fierce and rough soldiers of Iron Cloud. Therefore, Diwu Qingru could only use his wisdom to make up for it. However, Diwu Qingru also had a great consolation. King of Helchu is dead. Otherwise, it would have been very troublesome for me to face the Iron Cloud Triangle alone. Jing Menghun had rushed to Diwu Qingru's side with bruises all over his body. Diwu Qingru couldn't believe his eyes. He was a peak king-level expert. He had dispatched millions of people to kill a revered level expert like King of Helchu. And Jing Menghun had crippled him. Moreover, his body was covered with cuts and bruises. He had almost lost his life. This was beyond everyone's expectations. However, Diwu Qingru had heard that hundreds of people had attacked King of Helchu at the end of the battle. And Jing Menghun had successfully launched a sneak attack. He felt that King of Helchu was dead. And Jing Menghun was very confident. Even an emperor-level expert wouldn't have been able to withstand that kind of attack. Diwu Qingru sighed the next day. It's a pity that King of Helchu wasn't able to fight a decisive battle with such a hero on the battlefield. It's a real regret of my life. Suddenly, a soldier came to report, Prime Minister, a man from Iron Cloud has come out. He's wearing black clothes, a black robe, and a black veil. He claims to be an old friend of the Prime Minister's mansion. He says that he wants to thank the Prime Minister for his generosity in gifting the orchid incense to you. So, he wants to talk with the Prime Minister. Chapter 391. Then, he looked at Jing Menghun with a gentle gaze. Jing Menghun's complexion turned deathly pale. He cried out, "This is impossible." Diwu Qingru insipidly said, "He's here." "What's impossible?" Jing Menghun was in a daze. Diwu Qingru had already stood up. A group of Iron Cloud soldiers were standing in neat rows on the battlefield. They were standing in a quiet manner. The east wind was blazing. Iron Cloud's military flag was pointed straight to the sky. Then, It was blown up neatly with a flapping sound. The fluttering sound of the military flag could make anyone who heard it feel a desire to kill. It was a desire for war. 2 fast horses were standing motionless in front of the troops. 2 men were standing upright on the backs of the horses. It couldn't be seen how old they were. They were standing in front of a magnificent army. But they still looked somewhat blurry under the blazing sun. They couldn't be seen clearly. In front of them, a black horse stood alone. There was a man on the horse. He was dressed in black and wore a black robe. He wore a ferocious golden mask. His loose black robe made a sharp sound as it fluttered in the wind of the east wind. Around the black-clothed man, a biting cold aura was constantly surging and churning. He was alone on his horse. But the soldiers of the great Zhao army on the other side had a clear feeling in their hearts. It was as if an ancient devil god had suddenly drilled out from the depths of hell. He had appeared in broad daylight. Wherever his sharp gaze landed, everyone felt a bone-chilling coldness. King of Hell Chu. He didn't need to announce his name. But the soldiers of Great Zhao couldn't help but think of this name as soon as they saw him. Only this kind of imposing manner, could be on par with Prime Minister Diwu. Only such a person could withstand the all-out pursuit of the Golden Horse Riders Department. And he had violently galloped for a distance of 13,000 miles. And he had appeared here at this moment. The bugle horn of Great Zhao's army resounded in a desolate manner. The entire army suddenly parted like a tide. It left a quiet and dry road between them. Everyone's eyes became full of respect and fanaticism at this moment. The sound of hoof beats slowly resounded. Diwu Qingru's guards appeared. Diwu Qingru appeared in front of King of Hell Chu with a faint smile on his face. The guard was somewhat hesitant, but Diwu Qingru pointed his folding fan forward. His attitude was very firm. The guards had no choice but to continue to carry him forward. They only stopped when they crossed the line. Then, Diwu Qingru waved his hand, and all the soldiers retreated. Only Diwu Qingru's carefree chair was left on the battlefield, and he was facing a 1,000-man army all by himself. Then, Diwu Qingru slightly raised his head. He looked at Chu Yang and smiled. His smile was light, but it contained many kinds of gratitude. The 2 shadows were somewhat restless. Diwu Qingru is rumored to not know any martial arts. This is a heaven-sent opportunity. What if he were to kill or capture him now? The 2 moved slightly, and Chu Yang was startled. He shouted in a low voice, "Do you want to die?" Ying was stunned. Diwu Qingru is an emperor-level expert, Chu Yang said in a low voice. The 2 shadows broke out in a cold sweat, and their eyes became dull. Emperor-level expert? Diwu Qingru had deceived the world. Then, Chu Yang urged his warhorse. The warhorse resolutely walked towards Diwu Qingru step by step. The distance was getting closer and closer. Line. The distance between the 2 was less than 30 feet. This was a very dangerous distance. Especially for Chu Yang, it was even more dangerous. Then, Chu Yang stopped the warhorse and raised his eyes to look at Diwu Qingru. Diwu Qingru also raised his head at this time. He looked at Chu Yang with a warm gaze. Their eyes met. It was unknown why, but all the soldiers behind them who knew that these 2 men were meeting today felt a strange feeling rise in their hearts the moment their eyes met. It seemed as if the whole world had suddenly shaken at this moment. Then, it suddenly became dark. Then, Diwu Qingru laughed in a relaxed manner. He sat on the carefree chair. His whole body was extremely relaxed. He said, "It's not easy to meet you." Chu Yang replied with equal harshness, "Prime Minister Diwu also doesn't go out of the house." Diwu Qingru laughed happily and said, "I need qualifications internally. I also need qualifications externally." Chu Yang also laughed. His meeting with Diwu Qingru today was also a stroke of genius. Originally, he thought that he would hide in the dark and use his own energy to cause destruction. Then, he would wait for the right opportunity to strike. However, Chu Yang thought for a long time. Then, he gave up and decided to meet directly. The news that King of Hell Chu was still alive would not be hidden from Diwu Qingru sooner or later. However, If he knew from other people's mouths, his heart would have a buffer. He would be mentally prepared. Diwu Qingru would quickly adjust himself. He would not be swayed by this news. Moreover, he would quickly formulate countermeasures. When he met Chu Yang again, he would have a sense of accomplishment. He would have a sense of satisfaction that everything was under his control. However, Chu Yang had suddenly jumped out and asked to see Diwu Qingru when Diwu Qingru was fully confident that the acting king was dead. This was a heavy blow to Diwu Qingru's complacency. This would make Diwu Qingru feel frustrated. So, he didn't die. I paid such a big price, and he didn't die. What Chu Yang needed was for Diwu Qingru to feel frustrated. Even if it was only a trace, it would make him feel that everything had deviated from his control. This was because the deciding factor of this war was not the number of troops. It was Diwu Qingru. If Diwu Qingru continued to take every possibility into account, then Ironclad's side would have gone all out. It would have been a long and arduous war. And they would have been defeated in the end. Therefore, Chu Yang had to do everything he could to break Diwu Qingru's mental state. And this sudden meeting was his first move. Diwu Qingru looked at his ferocious mask with some interest. He laughed and said, "You should have let those two come." Chu Yang smiled mischievously. "Come. I would have given you a chance to make a move. Would I have given you enough reason to kill the three of us in front of everyone?" "No." Diwu Qingru smiled. "They would have died if they had come. But, you. I am not sure." He gently exhaled and said casually, "The mysterious king of Hell Chu. The king of Hell Chu who slaughtered the entire 13,000-mile border of Great Zhao." "Ha ha," Chu Yang laughed. "It is my honor to receive such an evaluation from the Prime Minister." Diwu Qingru was silent for a while. Then, he said, "In Great Zhao, those two Chus. Were you?" "Yes." Chu Yang did not hide anything. There was no point in denying it at this moment. "Well, you were the one who received my palm, right?" Diwu Qingru asked, but his tone was firm. "Yes." "Well." Diwu Qingru's tone became calmer. He said, "You were the one who entered my hidden treasure house, right?" "Hidden treasure house?" Chu Yang frowned. "Not you." Diwu Qingru asked softly. "No." Chu Yang said. That was a mysterious ability that involved Jiezun. How could Chu Yang admit it? "Oh, so it wasn't you," Diwu Qingru said quietly. He carefully observed Chu Yang's facial expression from the corner of his eye. It was so sharp that it seemed as if it could penetrate his mask and see every inch of his face. After a long time, Diwu Qingru slowly said, "It seems that it was someone else." Unconsciously, he let out a sigh of relief. "King of Hell Chu is not the master of Jiezun. Prime Minister, you must take good care of the hidden treasure house." Chu Yang reminded him, it would be a huge loss if one or two items were taken away from such an important place. "Are you taking pleasure in other people's misfortune?" Diwu Qingru laughed involuntarily. Then, his eyes slowly became sharp as he said, "You didn't come to see me today to talk nonsense." Chu Yang nodded seriously. "Actually, today I really just want to see what kind of person Prime Minister Diwu is. He is the ruler of the entire Great Zhao, and has the entire world in his hands." Diwu Qingru smiled slowly. "It is also a pleasure to watch the war." He calmly looked at Chu Yang. "The moment you appeared and asked to see me, I knew that the war between the two countries had begun. Prime Minister Diwu, you must go all out in this war of the world." Chu Yang's eyes gradually became sharp. He softly said, "You have a great reputation. Don't ruin it. I will go all out." Diwu Qingru slowly nodded. He didn't respond to Chu Yang's aggressiveness. Instead, he simply and calmly stated a fact: "Let's see who can decide the fate of this battlefield. Let's see who can rise and fall. King of Hell Chu, ha ha ha." Diwu Qingru softly said, "Don't let me down. I'm afraid that the Prime Minister will exceed your expectations." Chu Yang said indifferently. Suddenly, he fiercely looked at Diwu Qingru. His eyes were as sharp as swords. It seemed as if two fierce divine swords were piercing through the blue dome of heaven. Diwu Qingru was still calm. But, his pupils slightly shrank as he said, Even if it is beyond my expectations, I must face it. I must win. Both of them no longer spoke. The sun was shining in the sky. There were no clouds for thousands of miles. However, everyone in the army behind the two of them could feel that a storm was coming. It seemed as if the entire blue sky was about to collapse at this moment. After a long time, Chu Yang looked up at the sky and insipidly said, "Prime Minister, if you lose this war, your name, Diwu Qingru, will be immortalized on this continent. The world will remember the name, Diwu Qingru. It will become a legend." Diwu Qingru calmly said, "After the destruction of Iron Cloud, I promise to write a biography of you. I will make the name of King of Hell Chu a legend of the continent." Both of them laughed together. Chapter 392. Chu Yang's laughter reverberated throughout the world. It seemed as if it could shake the wind and thunder. King of Hell Chu's arrogant attitude was imprinted in the hearts of the two armies. The heavens trembled, the mountains shook, and the earth moved. The three armies held their breaths. It seemed as if this figure who was roaring towards the sky was like a heaven-shaking god. It seemed as if he could cut the sky and the earth into two halves wherever he passed. So arrogant. So arrogant. This King of Hell Chu is good. Diwu Qingru chuckled and shook his head. I was tricked by this guy in the end. He can proudly declare to the world that he can be as arrogant as he can. But, I can't. But, this has created an illusion in front of the two armies that I have fallen into a disadvantageous position. This guy. He won't let go of any opportunity. Diwu Qingru slowly thought as he returned to his camp. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake his head while thinking about Chu Yang's words. This King of Hell Chu's words seem meaningless on the surface. But in reality, every word he said was aimed at the defenses in his heart. Perhaps, I would have been influenced by him if my mind wasn't firm. Immortality, doesn't it affect me? Diwu Qingru's face sank. Millions of soldiers remained silent as they watched the two separate. They watched King of Hell Chu ride his horse back to the camp. They watched Diwu Qingru return. And, the day passed like this. The curtain of night fell, and the world became dark. The Iron Cloud's camp was dotted with stars. The patrolling troops were coming and going. The army was ready for battle. Tai Longcheng and Tai Bu Tian were sitting opposite each other in the commander's tent. This King of Hell Chu is much more arrogant and overbearing than before. Tai Longcheng smacked his lips and praised, he threatened Diwu Qingru. He made Diwu Qingru eat a loss in front of so many people. This is an unparalleled boost to the army's morale. Tai Bu Tian smiled and replied, yes. He thought, that's natural. After all, King of Hell Chu is the real King of Hell Chu. However, Diwu Qingru ate a loss in silence. So, Great Zhao's morale will inevitably be affected. If Diwu Qingru wants to restore his reputation, then he can only use his face to do so. Therefore, Great Zhao may attack the camp tonight. Tai Longcheng and Diwu Qingru had fought for half of their lives. So, it could be said that they understood each other very well. It's just that, even if it's a sneak attack, it's hard to predict what kind of measures he'll take and what kind of methods he'll use. Tai Butian frowned. The only thing we can do now is to stick to the status quo. Tai Longcheng took a deep breath. In Bu Tian Pavilion's main camp, King of Hell Chu was wearing a black robe and a sinister mask. He looked like the real King of Hell as he sat majestically on the highest chair. His sharp gaze was incomparably sharp as he looked at his subordinates. A bone-chilling cold filled the tent. Cheng Ang and Chen Mientong both sat straight and expressionless. Their hearts were filled with apprehension. What's going on? The minister had clearly relaxed for a while. Why is his coercion getting heavier and heavier this time? This feeling of oppression was really unbearable, making it hard for him to sit still. She stole a glance at Wu Qianqian, who was standing next to Chu Yang with an ice-cold expression. She cursed silently. When did this Russian granny come? How come we didn't see her? Especially during this period of time, the new recruits of Bu Tian Pavilion were seeing the real King of Hell Chu for the first time. They were so frightened by this gloomy atmosphere that they almost peed in their pants. Two hall leaders, please report everything that has happened recently. Chu Yang's finger gently tapped on the table in front of him. It was as if the king of hell was beating a drum. Both of them cursed silently in their hearts. Didn't you already know? But in this kind of situation, who would dare to say even half a word? They had no choice but to report everything again. Chu Yang quietly listened. Finally, he finished listening and said casually, "So, you're saying that everyone has been very busy during this period of time, right? So, everyone's strength hasn't improved. It's not because everyone didn't work hard, but because they were too busy. Isn't that the case?" Cheng Ang and Chen Yutong's faces fell at the same time. This was the only thing that Minister Chu had not urged during this period of time. Everyone felt as if they had been pardoned. They did not expect that he would bring it up today. This is the place where we are right now. Tens of millions of ghosts are screaming day and night. Chu Yang said casually, "Now, in my opinion, as long as the war starts, many of you will join the ranks of these ghosts. This is the consequence of not working hard on your own strength." Minister Chu snorted heavily. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. "We will soon face Golden Horse Riders Department. Everyone get ready," Chu Yang said casually. Then, he waved his hand. Cheng Ang and the others hurriedly left. They were sweating profusely. The minister's power was getting heavier and heavier. Only Wu Qianqian and Chu Yang were left in the tent. The strength of these people must be pushed every day. Chu Yang said softly, "People are lazy. And, it's impossible for these people to rely on self-conscious practice to increase their strength. Therefore, you must set a goal for them every once in a while. Let them complete it as a mission. This will increase the strength of Bu Tian Pavilion." "Yes," Wu Qianqian said. "What stage are you at now?" Chu Yang looked at Wu Qianqian. "Third grade martial master." Wu Qianqian said somewhat embarrassedly. She didn't know that her progress was enough to make many people dumbfounded. "Not bad," Chu Yang said. It was indeed not bad. The martial arts of Beyond the Heavens sect were known for their steady progress. It was impossible to improve quickly. Wu Qianqian's speed was already beyond Chu Yang's expectations. Wu Qianqian bit her lips and said, "Chu Yang, I want strength. I want to advance quickly. Can you help me?" She said awkwardly, "I know you have many martial arts techniques. I want to improve myself quickly. The faster the better. I don't want to catch up with you. But I want to break into upper three heavens or upper three heavens when I miss you. I want to listen to your legends." Chu Yang pondered for a moment. "Okay. I will choose for you." How could Chu Yang not want Wu Qianqian to improve her strength? That way, she would at least have the ability to protect herself. Then, Chu Yang frowned and thought. He asked the sword spirit in his mind, "Is there a martial art suitable for women to practice? It's more powerful and faster to practice." The sword spirit was sitting cross-legged between the mysterious young jade and the mysterious jade crystal. He had recovered his spirit with the help of the mysterious young jade and the mysterious jade crystal. Moreover, he had made progress. He frowned when he heard Chu Yang's question, "A martial art for women to practice? Well, don't talk about the ordinary ones. They are too slow." Chu Yang flatly rejected. "Then, there's only one." The sword spirit said, "Fortunately, my strength has improved greatly. So, I have remembered many things. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to answer your question." "What? How about the mysterious yin transformation?" The sword spirit was clearly proud of himself. He looked as if he was presenting a treasure. "Mysterious yin transformation?" Chu Yang was startled. "Isn't that a devil martial art?" "Nonsense." The sword spirit angrily said, "This is the most orthodox martial art. But someone tampered with the formula and reversed the meridians. So, this martial art must absorb the power of a girl's mysterious yin female body to practice. But I have the complete formula of the mysterious yin transformation technique here. So, that's how it is." Chu Yang touched his nose. "I'm obviously ignorant and inexperienced compared to this 10,000-year-old monster." The sword spirit closed his eyes. Not long after, 3 old books fell out with a bang. Mysterious yin transformation technique turning soldier yin step mysterious yin transformation technique. Chu Yang looked at these 3 books in his consciousness. He couldn't help but be speechless. He suddenly had a feeling that this spirit scraping technique is a martial art treasure trove. Also, I must remind you that this mysterious yin transformation technique will be faster if you use it with 7 yin cold energy or mysterious jade crystal. The sword spirit was obviously reluctant to part with the mysterious jade crystal. I understand. Chu Yang mischievously smiled. Since that's the case, you don't need to practice the martial arts of Beyond the Heavens sect. I'll teach you another one. Chu Yang's mind turned. Mysterious yin transformation technique had caused a huge bloody disaster in the Chongtian continent thousands of years ago. Everyone thought that this was the most evil martial art. It's better not to tell Wu Chen Chen my real name. I don't want to bring her endless trouble. What? Wu Chen Chen's spirit was lifted. Ice Jade Divine Technique. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, I'll teach you the formula now. You must remember it well. Don't form it into words. This is the continent's top martial art. You'll be in big trouble if other people know about it. Okay. Wu Chen Chen nodded vigorously. Her eyes shone. The continent's top martial art. That's great. I'll be able to close the distance between you and me. Wu Chen Chen was extremely smart. She didn't need a long time to memorize the formula. Chu Yang was already thinking about the mysterious jade crystal. Sword spirit, how many mysterious jade crystals do I need? How many? The sword spirit rolled his eyes. You only need a small piece to wear. Why do you need a lot? Well, I'll take a small piece. Chu Yang looked at the space. The sword spirit was sitting cross-legged in a huge array of mysterious yang jade and mysterious jade crystal. He said, Will this array work for me? Of course it will. The sword spirit snorted. This is a yin-yang array. It can gather the purest spirit energy. Why didn't you tell me? Chu Yang asked angrily. I haven't recovered yet. The sword spirit felt somewhat guilty. He said, Moreover, you have so many good things. Why did you put them all outside to set up the array? You can't do this even if you want to die. What about the small ones? Chu Yang asked. The small ones also seemed to work. The sword spirit was helpless. He had no choice but to grab a finger-sized piece of mysterious yang jade and a piece of mysterious jade crystal. He kneaded them and made them into a strange shape. He rolled his eyes and said, I know you want to leave a way out for your confidant. Take them. Chu Yang was overjoyed. Chapter 393. This is for you. Chu Yang rummaged in his bosom and handed it over to Wu Chen Chen. This is. Wu Chen Chen was somewhat surprised. Wear this with you. It can double your practice speed, Chu Yang said vaguely. It's beautiful. Wu Chen Chen didn't know what it was, but she felt comfortable holding it in her hand. It was slightly cold on one side and slightly warm on the other. However, the cold and warm seemed to be interchanging with each other. She looked at it fondly for a while. Then, she put it away like a treasure. Practice well, Chu Yang said in a very encouraging manner. Wu Chen Chen smiled sweetly. She didn't care about the secret manual. She cared about the fact that Chu Yang had finally given her a treasure. He had personally given it to her. This made Wu Chen Chen's heart feel very sweet. Chu Yang didn't know that his Shen-Yin transformation and the yin-yang jade pendant would give birth to a terrifying character. That was because Chu Yang didn't know one thing. Even the sword spirit didn't know Wu Chen Chen had grown up in a place with 7 shades cold energy. Moreover, this extremely intelligent woman was born with the Shen-Yin female puppet body. The Shen-Yin transformation, as its name implied, could transform an ordinary woman's physique into a Shen-Yin female puppet body. Then, it could display a terrifying power. However, Wu Chen Chen didn't need this transformation. She could directly enter the Shen-Yin realm. This was like practicing martial arts or cultivating immortality. An ordinary person would start from the body. Then, they would temper their bones and organs step by step. Then, they would go from Hutian to Xiantian. After that, they would reach foundation establishment and become immortal. However, Wu Qianqian's body had already reached foundation establishment. She was just waiting to receive the bow. Her starting point was much higher than most people's. Everyone started from the flat ground. But Wu Qianqian started from the clouds. How could it be generalized? Although she wouldn't reach the level of the Master of Calamity Sword, she was more than one level higher than Chu Yang in terms of strength. Of course, Chu Yang didn't know this at the moment. This page was destined not to be peaceful. Suddenly, the lights of Diwu Qingru's army were extinguished. Iron Cloud's side became nervous. Then, a team of soldiers rushed towards Iron Cloud's camp like an angry dragon from the dark. Iron Cloud's side. The archers would quickly prepare, and the arrows would come down like rain. However, the Great Zhao's army suddenly changed its direction when it was still several hundred feet away from the Iron Cloud's military camp. Then, it rolled up like a gale. Then, it took a small detour, and returned to its original position with a rumbling sound. So it was just a false alarm. Then, the Great Zhao's army attacked from all directions. They attacked from the east and the west, and attacked from every angle. However, this kind of harassment could turn into reality at any time, making it difficult for others to grasp. Diwu Qingru's harassment would be more effective the longer the battle line was stretched out. The soldiers of Iron Cloud had been harassed dozens of times in a row. And this had caused the soldiers of Iron Cloud to curse out loud. Some bad-tempered generals even began to curse. What the fuck? How could he let her sleep? Why don't you just charge over and start a fight? In the commander's tent, Tai Longcheng's expression was calm as he commanded. Now was not the time for a decisive battle. It would be really bad if he, the commander, was angered as well. As for Tai Butian, she had already gone to bed. His Majesty the Emperor had not been able to sleep well these past few days. Now, he could finally have a good sleep. Diwu Qingru's harassment was endless. The sky had not yet brightened, but he had already attacked 40 to 50 times. Sometimes, he would attack from 7 or 8 directions at the same time. Then, another wave of attack came as dawn approached. This time, 4 troops came at the same time. Alarms sounded from 4 directions at the same time. The troops from the other 3 directions only harassed for a while, and then retreated. Everyone was used to this. They would only use the archers to resist for a while, and these people would retreat. But Gui's seemingly flat army did not retreat. They faced the rain of arrows, and madly rushed into the Iron Cloud's military camp with irresistible force. This was beyond everyone's expectations. The number of this cavalry wasn't very large. It was only about 2,000 or 3,000. But every one of them was brave and unstoppable. Iron Cloud's valiant soldiers couldn't even last one round in front of them. Moreover, the seemingly ordinary armor on their bodies was impervious to swords and spears. The arrows were shot, and issued a crisp sound of impact. Then, they bounced back. They broke through the fences and the defensive positions. Then, they split into small groups and scattered with a loud bang. They fell into the pit that had been dug earlier. Iron Cloud's troops were cheering when they heard an orderly roar. Then, the war horses fiercely jumped out of the pit, and thrust out their spears like lightning. Screams were heard everywhere. The cavalry had split up, and then suddenly converged into one. They were like an unstoppable flood as they rushed into the depths of Iron Cloud's army. Iron Cloud's high-ranking officers were furious. They mobilized their own troops to encircle and intercept them. Tai Longcheng stood on a high ground, and looked at the Iron Cloud's troops from afar. He sighed and said, "Golden Horse Riders Department's reputation is well-deserved." He paused for a moment, and then said, "Diwu Qingru is willing to pay such a price." The other high-ranking officers nodded one after another. They looked at this troop with shock in their eyes. They thought of their own subordinates. How many times would our troops be able to withstand such an elite troop if we were caught off guard? This troop of Golden Horse Riders had rushed forward for a short distance. But it had turned into an iron wall in front of them. However, this troop of riders had suddenly changed direction. They had made a turn that an ordinary cavalry troop would never have been able to make. And they had slaughtered their way out from another direction. It didn't take long. It had only been half an hour. Smoke billowed, and battle cries shook the sky. Dawn had arrived. This troop of riders had slaughtered their way out of this place, and had left behind a trail of blood and flesh. They had slaughtered their way out of Ironclad's tight defensive perimeter, and had returned to their main camp. They had killed around 2,000 of their 2,500 men. For Great Zhao, this was undoubtedly a glorious victory. Our Great Zhao is still invincible. Ironclad can't withstand a single blow from us. The morale of Great Zhao's army had suddenly soared. Tai Longcheng's eyes were profound as he watched the Golden Horse riders leave. His face was calm. Supreme Commander, why didn't we dispatch our elite troops to stop them in one fell swoop? A general next to him was somewhat angry and puzzled. This is Minister Chu's decision. Tai Longcheng indifferently said, it's not the time to dispatch our elite troop. The dissatisfied generals suddenly became silent as soon as they heard that it was Minister Chu's decision. They remembered the arrogant king of Hell Chu who had embarrassed Diwu Qingru in front of a 1,000,000-man army. King of Hell Chu's loud roar had silenced the entire 8-million-man army of the two countries. No one had dared to raise any objections. No one knew that Diwu Qingru had been standing alone on the roof of the Supreme Commander's tent that night. He had been looking at the twinkling stars in the sky. His face had turned ashen. Diwu Qingru had arrived here after he had arranged the assault strategy. He had been standing there for the entire night. The soldiers knew that Prime Minister Diwu had gone to sleep. But they didn't know that he hadn't slept at all. Why is this? Diwu Qingru tightly knitted his brows and muttered to himself, the stars had only blurred the mysteries of heaven the last time. But why did the universe suddenly turn upside down this time? Great Zhao, which was as bright as the sun, suddenly dimmed. And the Emperor Star of Ironclad had always been dim and obscure. But it had suddenly shone with boundless radiance. Diwu Qingru was puzzled. The last time I had seen the celestial phenomenon was when the two sides were entangled. It was obscure and difficult to understand. But it's so clear now. What happened during this period of time? Diwu Qingru was confused. He only felt that his thoughts were in a mess. He didn't know that Tai Biutian would have been so ashamed that she would have been unable to show her face if he had asked her about it. After all, she had saved Chu Yang that night before dawn. The intelligent star has dimmed. A large number of military stars have fallen. The north is shining with red light. The south is bowing and surrendering to the north. But what's going on with this star? Diwu Qingru stared at the night sky. His brows knitted tighter and tighter. A star was shining in the sky within his observation range. It was emitting a dazzling brilliance. The nearby stars were dim and lightless. Perhaps they couldn't be seen at all. This was the Emperor Star. However, above this star, there was another star that shone brightly. The Emperor Star's incomparable brilliance was unable to suppress this star. Furthermore, the two stars didn't repel each other at all. Instead, they seemed to be getting along very well. The auxiliary stars should have been below the Emperor Star. But why is this auxiliary star above the Emperor Star? The Master is weak and the ministers are strong. This is a great calamity. But why is it so harmonious? The auxiliary star had never appeared before. So, why did it suddenly appear this time? Could it be that this auxiliary star is King of Hell Chu? Diwu Qingru was distressed as he pondered. There's only one possibility for such a situation to occur. And that is, something happened between King of Hell Chu and Tai Biutian. But what could have happened that could have caused such a huge change in the celestial phenomenon? The wisdom star has dimmed. Could it be that I, Diwu Qingru, will face an unpredictable calamity? Diwu Qingru stood in a daze for a long time. He felt as if his thoughts were in a mess. He couldn't sort them out at all. This sudden change in the celestial phenomenon had thoroughly overturned Diwu Qingru's understanding of the celestial phenomenon. He felt as if his head was about to explode as he thought about it. The Emperor Star is strong. It's clear that it's as bright as the sun. Since that's the case, it's the will of heaven. But the Emperor Star had always been shining in Great Zhao before this. The red light and auspicious aura were clearly in Great Zhao. Why did it suddenly change? Isn't this change playing with me, Diwu Qingru, for the rest of my life? Diwu Qingru's face revealed endless frustration and anger. Heaven, why are you playing with me like this? The Emperor Star has always been in the south for 25 years. But it suddenly shifted to the north at this decisive moment. This is the will of heaven. How can you make such a joke? Chapter 394. 25 years ago, Diwu Qingru had seen the celestial phenomenon. Therefore, he had shouldered the mission of his clan and had come to the lower three heavens with the ambition of unifying the world. Following the heavens' will was the way to success. How could Diwu Qingru have chosen the wrong side with the celestial phenomenon as a guide? Therefore, he had entered Great Zhao as he wished. He had slowly grasped power, and had eventually become an ambitious and ruthless person who could command the world by himself. However, the celestial phenomenon had suddenly changed at the time of the decisive battle. This was undoubtedly telling him, all your efforts are just a joke. You are being toyed with, that's all. The black celestial phenomenon you saw is fake. It's fake. The real thing has only appeared now. This was equivalent to toying with Diwu Qingru's life's work. Why would Diwu Qingru have sought refuge with Great Zhao if he had known that the heavens will would eventually belong to Iron Cloud? He had suddenly changed his mind when he could no longer look back. Moreover, it was an irresistible heaven's will. How could this not make Diwu Qingru mentally and physically exhausted? Even if it's heaven's will, I will make heavens will pay the price. However, Diwu Qingru's elegant beard was stained with blood. His eyes suddenly turned gloomy as he fiercely muttered to himself, even if I can't reverse it, I, Diwu Qingru, can't be humiliated. Even if heaven's will can't be reversed, I will bury these 8 million soldiers with me. I want the world to remember the name of Diwu Qingru. The armies of the two countries frequently killed each other in the next half-month. The war had reached a stalemate. Diwu Qingru's crafty schemes came out one after another. He created a diversion in the east and attacked in the west. It seemed as if his ingenious schemes were endless. Iron Cloud had Tai Longcheng, Tai Butian, and King of Hell Chu on their side. Diwu Qingru's strategy could be described as unfathomable. His insight into the war situation was so keen that it made people's hearts cold. Diwu Qingru had the overall situation under his control. He wantonly dispatched his army. The Golden Horse Riders Department's army was especially unpredictable. Diwu Qingru knew that his original arrangement was useless now that King of Hell Chu had returned. They would only be defeated by the enemy if they were to disperse. Therefore, he formed another army under Jing Menghun's command. The lethality of this army became even more terrifying. There were dozens of battles every day, but there was no sign of a decisive battle. Tai Longcheng, Tai Butian, and Chu Yang had been forced to separate under his immense pressure. He confronted Diwu Qingru. However, during this period of time, Chu Yang had fallen into a strange state of mind. Things started half a month ago. Ever since Chu Yang had given Wu Qingqing the secret manual, she had been allowed to cultivate it by herself. But on the night of the next 2 days, Wu Qingqing came to Chu Yang's tent uneasily. She wanted to say something but hesitated. What is it? Chu Yang asked. Chu Yang, I seem to have broken through. Wu Qingqing was a little uncertain. With some fear and helplessness, she said, No, I didn't act recklessly. I just followed the mental cultivation method of the Ice Jade Divine Technique, and then I discovered the bottleneck of this mental cultivation method. I didn't feel it, but I advanced to the 4th grade of Martial Master. Huh? Chu Yang's eyes widened. Let me see. Even if you are a genius, you can't be this fast. Chu Yang grabbed Wu Qingqing's wrist. His energy entered her body and circled around her meridians. He didn't find any abnormalities. Unwilling to give up, he probed again. Again, he only found vigorous vitality. There is no problem. Chu Yang withdrew his hand and scratched his head. No problem. Wu Qingqing was a little uneasy. Then should I continue cultivating? Cultivate. You should be happy that your strength has increased. Why are you panicking? Chu Yang said. He thought to himself, It seems that she was already on the verge of breaking through the 3rd grade of martial master. Chuan, now is the time for a breakthrough. Yes, it must be like this. Then, on the next night, Wu Qingqing came again. She wanted to say something but hesitated. What is it? Chu Yang asked. This Chuan, I seem to have broken through again. Wu Qingqing stammered. Huh? Chu Yang was shocked. What grade is it now? Could it be that she advanced from 4th grade to 5th grade in one day? Isn't this too fast? Martial master grade. Wu Qingqing was flustered. She wanted to cry. What is going on? How can I break through with just one practice? Could there be a problem? Chu Yang was dumbfounded. After a thorough examination, Chu Yang was sure that there was nothing wrong with Wu Qingqing's body. Moreover, the Xianyin revolving technique was also operating normally. He was finally sure, there is nothing wrong. Wu Qingqing left with a heavy heart. Chu Yang also sat down with a heavy heart. So strange. She broke through with just one practice. She broke through with just one practice. Chu Yang was thinking, what is going on? This girl didn't eat any treasures. Wu Qingqing didn't come for 3 days. Chu Yang also let out a sigh of relief. But on that day, after dealing with Diwu Qingrou's attack, Wu Qingqing came again. Chu Yang. What? Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. You didn't break through this time? I broke through to martial great master. Huh? Minister Chu staggered, and almost fell to the ground. Chu Yang had always shocked others with his cultivation speed. Now, he finally had a taste of it himself. In half a month, Wu Qingqing and big sister Wu Qingqing rushed to martial great master grade unstoppably. Towards the end, Chu Yang was shocked until he was numb. It was really too fierce. Later, Chu Yang really couldn't sit still and asked the sword spirit. Then, the sword spirit was also shocked. He asked Chu Yang to call Wu Qingqing over and let him take her pulse. After that, the sword spirit was speechless for a long time. What's wrong? Chu Yang asked anxiously. I can't help it. This is really. The sword spirit said speechlessly. This is really heaven's will. Heaven's will? Chu Yang blinked. This Miss Wu Qingqing actually has the Xian defense body, which is rarely seen in 10,000 years, the sword spirit said speechlessly, and I originally had a few female cultivation techniques here. But for convenience, I took out the one beside me. And this is the most powerful one. Chu Yang asked in confusion, why? Is it inappropriate? It's not that it's inappropriate, but this technique is completely tailor-made for her. The sword spirit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You still remember the name of this technique? Xianyin transformation? Pill. It's the Xianyin transformation. The sword spirit sighed. Only after the transformation can one form the Xianyin female body. And this confidant of yours was actually born with the Xianyin body. What do you think is wrong? Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. You mean, she omitted the transfer procedure? The sword spirit nodded speechlessly. That's right. She started cultivating the Xianyin qi. For her, the first half of this technique is equivalent to a smooth path. There are no bottlenecks at all. She just needs to circulate the technique and she can easily advance. Asterisk asterisk. Chu Yang's eyes widened and he couldn't help but swear. Because of his agitation, he actually said this sentence. And at this time, Chu Yang was still taking Wu Qingqing's pulse. This was equivalent to holding her hand and saying, fuck. What kind of image was this? Wu Qingqing's face immediately turned red. She fiercely rolled her eyes at him and raised her eyebrows. What did you say? Cough cough. Chu Yang coughed awkwardly and hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. I said. Fuck, after fuck, my martial power might not be as high as yours, humph. Wu Qingqing rolled her eyes at him. She didn't know what this guy was thinking, so she didn't argue with him. But her face became redder and redder. In Chu Yang's mind, the sword spirit was already laughing. You're such a hooligan. It's all your fault. Chu Yang flew into a rage out of humiliation. He said fiercely, continue. Her advancement now is equivalent to the female Xianyin qi in her meridians being completely transformed into Xianyin qi. It's almost over. But after that, she has the yin-yang dual jades in her body. She also has the Shen-yin body and can cultivate Shen-qi. This progress can only be described as terrifying. What's the highest level of achievement? Chu Yang asked. Can she become a martial emperor? Martial emperor? The sword spirit disdainfully curled his lips. Martial emperor is nothing. Martial monarch? Martial monarch? Nothing. Asterisk asterisk. Martial saint. Chu Yang's eyes had already turned into bells. Martial fate. The sword spirit muttered. Chu Yang thought that he was going to say martial saint again. Nothing. At this time, the sword spirit finally opened his mouth. If she doesn't break down halfway and by chance, she should be able to cultivate to martial saint or even higher. It should be possible. But this path is full of difficulties and obstacles. It's easier said than done for a woman to cultivate all the way to the top. Chu Yang was stunned. Martial saint and even higher? Wouldn't that make her a supreme martial artist? His heart automatically ignored the last two sentences. It's a pity that the person who created the revolving Shen technique didn't cultivate to the supreme martial artist level. So, at the final stage, if she wants to go further, she can only create it herself. The sword spirit sighed. Because the creator of this technique, the Shen-yin martial fate, didn't have the Shen-yin body at the beginning of cultivation. Chu Yang was finally really shocked. Coming back to his senses, he looked at Wu Qingqing, whose face was full of anticipation and uneasiness. He sighed and said, "There's nothing wrong with the technique you're cultivating." But when Wu Qingqing heard him say but, her heart jumped. She asked, "What's wrong?" "But it's too compatible with your physique. That's why your cultivation speed is so fast." Chu Yang warned seriously, "After this, don't let anyone test your physique. Also, don't tell anyone about the technique you're cultivating, otherwise, it'll be very difficult for you to grow." "I understand." Wu Qingqing nodded firmly. She asked with a face full of expectation, "Can I cultivate to the martial king level with this technique?" Because in her opinion, the lowest standard to enter the upper three heavens was the martial king level. So she was very concerned about this martial king level. Martial king level. Chu Yang wanted to say, "Maybe you'll be a martial king level after cultivating for half a year." But after thinking about it, he didn't say it. He said, "Absolutely. And it'll be very fast as long as you work hard enough." "I'll work hard." Wu Qingqing clenched her small fist. Chapter 395. Sword Spirit heaved a long sigh and said, "But, you have to go to the upper three heavens or the lower three heavens to reach a certain level. But, you can't improve in the lower three heavens." Chu Yang frowned. He looked at the pleasantly surprised Wu Qingqing and said, "I will ask for her opinion when the time comes." Diwu Qingru had been venting his energy like a madman during this stalemate. Iron Cloud could only passively defend. Tai Long Cheng felt that this super abnormal phenomenon was very inconceivable. The wind doesn't last forever, the rain doesn't last forever. Diwu Qingru understood this principle. He would get tired and take a break from his indiscriminate bombardment. But, Iron Cloud would counterattack at that time, and Diwu Qingru would feel very uncomfortable. Why would this wise man of his generation make such an obvious mistake? Chu Yang didn't feel anything about this. He only calmly looked at his 300,000 strong army. Chu Yang was like an immovable mountain no matter how Diwu Qingru bombarded indiscriminately. He was sure that Diwu Qingru had a plan. Diwu Qingru's decisive battle would come when the dagger would be revealed. Moreover, this was a battle tactic. Both sides were tired. Great Zhao's soldiers were physically tired, but their spirits were high. They could see that their mortal enemy could only let go, and they could attack to their heart's content. As a soldier, this was incomparable to their spirit. On the other hand, Iron Cloud's side was sullen and depressed. They could only withdraw and defend in the face of the enemy's indiscriminate bombardment. They had to use all their strength to prevent their position from being destroyed. How could they not be sullen? But, they couldn't act blindly without thinking. Diwu Qingru's army would fiercely gather once there was a gap in the defensive line. Then, they would expand the gap and attack the entire army. Everyone could see this clearly. This was because every time they attacked, they would send out 3 troops from different directions. 2 of the troops would be on the lookout, while the last one would charge and attack. It was obvious that as long as there was even the slightest mistake on your side, the other 2 troops would immediately join in and tear apart the gap. The other attacking troops would have an opportunity to take advantage of the situation if they were to deploy troops from other barracks. Diwu Qingru's battle tactic was crazy and effective. Chu Yang had a faint feeling. Diwu Qingru seems to be deliberately forcing the armies of the 2 countries to a point of eruption. Once they are at the end of their rope, they will fight to the death. Chu Yang had this realization, but he couldn't believe it. Why? Diwu Qingru had no reason to do this. Therefore, he could only slowly continue to speculate, and then steadily deal with the storm-like harassment and attacks of Great Zhao's army. The Great Zhao's army had arrived like a gust of wind. Then, they would disperse like an ebbing tide after a short period of time. And, it seemed as if they didn't know what fatigue was. However, the Golden Horse Riders Department's attack that Chu Yang was looking forward to didn't appear. Minister, our army's morale is somewhat unstable. Chu Yang was in the tent when Wu Kuangyun walked in with large strides. He looked somewhat anxious. Everyone is feeling very depressed. If this goes on, when will it end? Is it our brother's morale that is unstable, or is it your morale that is unstable? Chu Yang raised his head and looked at him. Hey! Actually, I just came to ask if Dayuan, the commander-in-chief, and His Majesty had any instructions. Wu Kuangyun's dark face turned red. Wait. Chu Yang suddenly felt that the morale of the army would plummet if this continued. Wu Kuangyun had a bad temper. But, he was also a famous general in the army. So, how could the ordinary troops remain calm if even he was like this? Therefore, some measures must be taken. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. He beckoned Wu Kuangyun to come closer and said, after you go down, do this and this. When the Great Zhao's army comes again, do this and this. Wu Kuangyun beamed with joy. He nodded repeatedly. Then, he gave Chu Yang a thumbs up in admiration. Then, he walked away like a gust of wind. Wu Qingqing couldn't help but tremble behind Chu Yang. She thought, this Chu Yang is really mischievous. He doesn't forget to play pranks in such a battle. That night, a howl was heard along with the sound of hoofbeats. The Great Zhao's army was like a pack of wild wolves. At this moment, the Ironclad's army suddenly burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. This gang of idiots is here again. Look, this gang of idiots is running back and forth like dogs every night. It's really fucking cool. Brothers, come out and watch the show. Yes, we are just sitting here and waiting for this gang of idiots to act. Motherfucker, it's really cool. It costs money to go to the theater, but it's free here. The Ironclad's army suddenly swept away the depressing and dispirited mood of the past few days along with the expansion of this discussion. Everyone started to clamor. Then, the army of thousands of people started to shout loudly, stupid C*NT. You guys are here. Idiots, are you tired? The Great Zhao's army had arrived with great momentum. But, they were met with such treatment. They immediately flew into a rage. They fought for a while, and both sides suffered casualties. Then, they retreated. Then, they heard howls behind them. Idiots, are you leaving again? Idiots, come back earlier. The Great Zhao's general almost fell off his horse. What's more, under the leadership and encouragement of Wu Kuangyun, this group of straightforward men worked together to compose a song within half a day. Then, they promoted it throughout the entire army. The song was called Idiots, Are You Tired? The lyrics were as follows: Idiots, are you tired of being driven like a dog every night? Idiots, can you ride a horse? Can you fight a war? Are you tired of being treated like a toy all night? Idiots, are you tired? Oh, hey, idiots, although you are bitter, although you are tired, but our hearts are comforted by your hardships every day. Oh, idiots, you are bitter, you are tired. Idiots, you are a good treasure for us to relax. A good treasure. Thump, 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 thump. Therefore, when the Great Zhao's army came again that night, Everyone was busy fighting the enemy, but they also built an earthen platform. On the earthen platform, there was a military band of several thousand people. The gongs and drums sounded together, and under the command of the band, 3,000 burly men simultaneously raised their thick necks, and opened their wolf-like voices, and began to sing in a grand and majestic voice, "Idiot! Idiot! Are you tired?" The surrounding area was heavily guarded. In fact, there was even a special group of guards. Therefore, the singers were only in charge of shouting as loudly as they could. Their voices were like thunder. This was rehearsed. Tens of millions of people were shouting and singing at the same time. And this suppressed the sounds of tens of thousands of people fighting. Therefore, the good Cloud's army was grinning from ear to ear. They were happy as they killed the enemy. Some of them were seriously injured. But they were crying out in pain and laughing at the same time. They were very happy. There was very little entertainment in the military camp. So, everyone was in high spirits now that there was such a good program. Many people were waving their sabers while singing along with the melody. The great Zhao's surprise troops were so angry that their bellies almost burst. They even abandoned their original plan and attacked the earthen platform full of singers. But this operation led to the complete annihilation of the entire army. There were casualties after the battle. But everyone was in high spirits. The usual depressing atmosphere after a battle was swept away. Even the great Zhao's mouths were humming. They were actually looking forward to the great Zhao's idiot's attack that night. Minister Chu's invention had thoroughly solved many problems for the Iron Cloud's army. In just one night, the entire 3 camps of the Iron Cloud were singing, "Idiots, are you tired? Idiots," singing. The singing became louder and louder. And everyone was fighting with more vigor. There was a soldier who had been slashed in the chest by the enemy. But he tilted his head, looked at the enemy soldier, and said with a smile, "Idiots, are you tired? Do you know how comforting I am?" These words enraged the great Zhao's soldier. He ferociously rushed forward, "I'll let you comfort me." However, this Iron Cloud soldier had a carefree smile on his face. He pulled out a saber from his chest and stabbed it into his enemy's heart. Iron Cloud had been on the defensive side of this night's offensive and defensive battle. And they had gained the complete upper hand. Moreover, several enemy troops had been left behind. And they had been completely annihilated. In the commander's tent, Tai Long Cheng was slapping his thighs and rocking back and forth. He couldn't stop laughing. He smacked his lips. "Fuck. This king of Hell Chu is really high, ha ha ha." Tai Ji Tian was on one side. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She was speechless. What could she say? She had nothing to say about Chu Yang's pranks, especially when it came to pranks that only had benefits and no harm. Tai Bu Tian could only choose to cover her ears and not listen. She could only smile bitterly. Tai Ji Tian had a clear understanding of this. Men are born with a strong tendency to swear, but Tai Bu Tian wasn't in the mood to think about this matter. She was thinking about another problem. A very serious problem. This problem made her flustered. Great Zhao's barracks, Diwu Qingru's face was serious. He looked a little pale. This situation, where did it first come from? It came from Wu Kuangyun's barracks. That bastard. The general's face was full of hatred. Wu Kuangyun. Diwu Qingru chuckled. His eyes flashed with a cold light. That's right. According to our previous estimates, King of Hell Chu should be in charge of Wu Kuangyun's army. He smiled faintly. Now, it's exactly the same as my estimates. King of Hell Chu should be in charge of Wu Kuangyun's army. Such a strategy is vulgar and seems naive. But it has a strong effect on raising the morale of the troops. This isn't something that Wu Kuangyun can come up with. King of Hell Chu is behind this. Diwu Qingru came to an unquestionable conclusion. The generals were dumbfounded. King of Hell Chu? Prime Minister, what should we do next? The generals asked in unison. Meng Gui, are you ready? Diwu Qingru asked. Chapter 396. Good. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed with a ruthless light as he said, in that case, tonight's raid will be the last time. Dispatch the Golden Horse Riders Department and give Iron Cloud a heavy blow. Then, Immediately withdraw the troops. Withdraw the troops. The generals turned pale with fright. Yes, withdraw the troops. Once the raid is over, immediately withdraw the troops. Leave the tents here. Don't touch anything else. It's enough to completely withdraw the troops, Diwu Qingru said casually. Yes. The generals didn't understand, but they knew that Diwu Qingru had a brilliant plan. Their blind trust in Diwu Qingru made them execute his orders without hesitation. Order the infantry to withdraw immediately. When the cavalry comes back, wrap the horses' hooves with cotton and quietly withdraw. Diwu Qingru added, make sure no one knows. Prime Minister, isn't this too hasty? If we hastily withdraw, we will have to go over this mountain. And, once this mountain is occupied by the enemy, it will mean that our 10 years of expeditions will be in vain. Moreover, Iron Cloud will have one more natural stronghold. This will be very detrimental to Great Zhao's unification plan. The Heavenly Dragon General Yu Han frowned. Dragon General Li Yi also nodded on the side. He agreed with His Majesty and Yu Han's words. Hasty, it must be hasty. If everything needs to be planned before acting, I'm afraid Iron Cloud will react at that time. Especially King of Hell Chu. I'm afraid the entire strategy will change once he reacts. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed as he said, Yu Han, you should know what I mean about this retreat. Why are you still asking? But the military's morale will inevitably be shaken. Moreover, if we attack back, the casualties will be very heavy. It will be equivalent to perishing together with the enemy. Yu Han's thin face was somewhat heavy and sad. The Golden Horse Riders Department had been constantly making arrangements. How could Yu Han not know what they were doing? Yu Han's body was covered in cold sweat when he saw those vicious arrangements. The enemy had fallen into the trap. But, his side didn't have much protection. It was bound to perish together. How could this heavenly dragon, who had always loved his troops, feel comfortable? Therefore, for the first time in his life, he questioned Diwu Qingru's orders. You only need to carry out the orders. Diwu Qingru looked at him gently and said, Yu Han, sacrifices are inevitable in war. Yu Han heaved a long sigh. That night, Great Zhao's attack was even more ferocious. It seemed as if they were covering the sky and covering the earth. Moreover, they didn't stop for the entire night. However, Iron Cloud's side had already recovered. Moreover, along with this violent attack, it clearly conveyed a thought. It seems that this kind of attack is about to stop. Tai Long Cheng was in the commander's tent. His brows wrinkled as he listened to the sounds of the heaven-shaking bandits outside. Several of his trusted generals were by his side. Diwu Qingru's attack had stopped. This meant that the time for Iron Cloud to counterattack had arrived. Therefore, the generals could not wait any longer. It won't be that simple. Tai Long Cheng faintly felt that Diwu Qingru definitely had more tricks up his sleeve. He waved his hand and said, let's wait until dawn. In the face of Diwu Qingru's unpredictable strategy, Tai Long Cheng did not dare to take any risks. He would rather give up this great opportunity than act blindly without thinking. In addition, immediately report this situation to His Majesty and Minister Chu. Let's see what they have to say. Tai Long Cheng made a decision. If the enemy retreats after dawn, and His Majesty and Minister Chu have no objections, we will immediately pursue and attack. On the other side, Chu Yang had been standing on the top of the flagpole when the chaos had just started. He had been quietly watching for a while. Then, he had come down with a heavy expression on his face. If he had guessed correctly, perhaps Diwu Qingru would reveal his true intentions tonight. However, he did not know what kind of arrangements this ambitious and ruthless man would make. He came down and saw Wu Qian standing beside the commander's tent. She was dressed in black. Her long hair and sleeves were fluttering in the wind. Tonight should come to an end, Wu Qingqing said in a low voice. Her. Chu Yang looked at her. I can feel Diwu Qingru's determination in this attack. Wu Qingqing casually said, there are 3 reasons. First, Diwu Qingru did not prepare an army camp tonight. Second, Diwu Qingru's total number of troops is close to 1 million if we calculate according to the number of troops he has invested. This is equivalent to a semi-decisive battle. However, it is taking place in the dark night. So, people can't feel the flavor of a decisive battle. As for the last reason, it is my feeling. Chu Yang looked at Wu Qingqing with some gratification. Wu Qingqing could see this point. It showed that she had matured in all aspects. She could take charge of a whole area alone. Especially the last sentence that Wu Qingqing had said with a very certain tone, my feeling. It was a kind of telepathy that belonged to a decision-making person. This was already an outstanding and powerful ability. Especially when the opponent was Diwu Qingru. This was even rarer. What would you do if you were Diwu Qingru? Chu Yang probed. If I were him, I would immediately attack after tonight's decisive battle if I could expand the results of the battle. If I couldn't, I would retreat immediately. Although this battlefield is big, it can't accommodate 8 million people at the same time. 1 million for each side is already the limit. Tonight is a semi-decisive battle. However, it will decide the outcome of the battle and the direction of the war. It can't happen tonight, and it certainly can't happen in the future. Therefore, I would retreat and plan slowly. I would conserve my forces and make a comeback. This is the best plan. Wu Qingqing paused and said, however, the elite cavalry of Golden Horse Riders Department hasn't appeared yet. This is my concern. If they don't appear, Diwu Qingru will have other ideas. If they appear and can't capture Ironclad's camp by daybreak, they will retreat. You've seen half of it. Chu Yang looked at her happily. He praised, but it's already not easy. The only half that I haven't seen is Diwu Qingru's character and Diwu Qingru's insidious arrangements. Diwu Qingru is not a person who gives up easily. If he wants to give up, there must be a reason. If he wants to withdraw, there must be a backup plan. Chu Yang said slowly, therefore, even if Diwu Qingru wants to withdraw, it will only be a trap. Trap? Wu Qingqing asked in confusion. Yes, have you seen the camps of both sides? Chu Yang asked himself in his heart. At the same time, he recalled Diwu Qingru's arrangements on the roof of the Prime Minister's manor. He slowly calculated. His words also became more and more intermittent as he continued to calculate. Our Ironclad side has a majestic pass to the north and steep mountains on both sides. We can attack and retreat. Moreover, we don't have to worry about the rear. But Diwu Qingru only needs to break through from the front. His path will be smooth. Yes. Wu Qingqing looked at Chu Yang in bewilderment. She thought, isn't this something that everyone knows? But look at Diwu Qingru's tough self. He has clearly put out a dragon coiling and tiger entrenched in the wind. Looking from afar, it looked like a huge dragon was coiling over, but it was holding its head high. Moreover, behind the dragon's body is a tiger's body. When the dragon moves, the wind and clouds gather. When the tiger roars, the fierce tiger comes down from the mountain. This is the posture of swallowing Ironclad in one fell swoop. This proves that Diwu Qingru has made up his mind to fight when he came here. How can he retreat so easily? Chu Yang frowned. He seemed to be asking Wu Qingqing, but also seemed to be asking himself. But there is one thing that is very strange. Originally, Great Zhao's camp was further forward. But after Diwu Qingru arrived, they unknowingly retreated 18 miles. Most of the main camp spread to the flat slope halfway up the mountain. Moreover, it changed from a horizontal formation to a square formation. In other words, after Diwu Qingru arrived, it became a dragon coiling and tiger entrenched camp. This shows that Diwu Qingru wants to take advantage of the terrain. Chu Yang rubbed his eyebrows and said with difficulty. He paused every time he said a sentence. It was as if he was pouring out his heart and lungs to analyze. This kind of analysis consumed a lot of energy. It was unimaginable. Especially analyzing the thoughts of the ambitious and ruthless Diwu Qingru, it was even more difficult. Setting up camp at the back of the mountain means that Great Zhao has an endless supply of food. This is a safe method. Moreover, by retreating 18 miles, we can avoid the exhaustion of transporting grain. How can this be called a conspiracy? Wu Qingqing frowned in contemplation and raised an objection. You did not see the terrain clearly. Chu Yang pulled Wu Qingqing into the tent and came to the sand table. Pointing at the terrain on the sand table, he said, Look, Wu Qingru set up camp here. It is foolproof. Look at the mountain behind him. The terrain of the mountain. It's very flat. This is also the condition created for the supply team. Even if we retreat, there will be no danger. This is a perfect plan. Wu Qingqing stared at the sand table with her pretty eyes. What if this mountain is Ironclad's team? Chu Yang pointed at the mountain and asked. If Ironclad's team is there, then attacking Wu Qingru would be as easy as blowing off dust. Wu Qingqing was very puzzled. How could Ironclad's team appear there? If they could, then the war would have ended long ago. This mountain is not high, but the terrain is very flat. There is no big slope. It is suitable for cavalry to charge. If the infantrymen are on high ground, they can display 3 times the fighting strength. As for the archers, spear throwers, knife throwers, and axe throwers, it is the best place to use their skills. Once they attack from the top of the mountain and attack Wu Qingru's camp, they will be meat on the chopping board. They can be slaughtered at will. Even turning around and running away will become an extravagant hope. Because running away in a hurry will not be as fast as the opponent's speed. Chu Yang spoke faster and faster. If Wu Qingru deliberately creates a situation where they run away in panic, will we chase after them? Of course we will chase, Wu Qingqing said without hesitation. But what if Wu Qingru set up an ambush on the top of the mountain? Chu Yang asked. When our army enters Ironclad's camp to collect supplies, they will suddenly attack like a tiger coming down from the mountain. Wu Qingqing suddenly broke out in cold sweat. Chapter 397. Zhuge Clan. Chu Yang's body shook. He had already guessed that Wu Qingru was a member of the Zhuge clan, which was one of the big ruling clans of the upper 3 heavens. However, he still felt somewhat shaken when he heard Wu Qingru admit it himself. You may not be familiar with the surname Wu. Wu Qingru smiled bitterly, but the glory of our Wu clan is incomparable to that of the Zhuge clan. Wu clan? Chu Yang frowned and racked his brains. But he still couldn't figure it out. He said, Please enlighten me. The Zhuge clan had 10,000 years of glory and was already a big shot in the entire heavenly layer. But who would remember that our Wu clan had 20,000 years of glory before the Zhuge clan? It's been 30,000 years since then. Wu Qingru smiled bitterly, but his voice was still soft. Our Wu clan was the dominant clan chosen by the 7th generation Tribulation Sword Master, and it was the most important and resourceful clan among the dominant clans. Among the big clans, it was ranked 5th. 10,000 years later, our clan's glory was still the same. Our ancestor Wu Qingru was born in the heavenly layer, and he was outstanding. Plus, he was very friendly with the 7th generation Tribulation Sword Master. So, 8 of the big clans declined under the Tribulation Sword, but our Wu clan flourished for another 10,000 years. I see. Chu Yang sighed. So this involves an ancient divine item like the Tribulation Sword. A clan with tens of thousands of years. It's really unimaginable. Wu Qingru smiled slightly. His eyes flashed and he continued, the 8th generation Tribulation Sword Master was born, and the world was turned upside down again. The Wu clan finally declined, and the new one to replace it was the Zhuge clan. I see. Chu Yang sighed. What a pity. And the remaining people of my Wu clan were only 2 or 3 youngsters. The others, including several martial saints and dozens of martial monarchs, were all buried in the Tribulation Sword. 10,000 years of inheritance was destroyed overnight. We had no choice but to live under someone else's roof and be taken in as slaves by the Zhuge clan. Servant. Chu Chen sucked in a cold breath. However, after thousands of years of evolution, our Wu clan was an intelligent clan after all. Although we couldn't rise again, we succeeded in getting rid of our slave status and became a servant of the Zhuge clan. Furthermore, his position was gradually stabilizing. In the last 1,000 years, he was already able to attend the academy with his clan's younger brothers. He could dabble in anything, whether it was martial arts or military strategy. Diwu Qingru's eyes lit up. Chu Yang remained silent. This was because he was thinking about Diwu Qingru's words. These words had shaken his mind. Several saint-level ancestors and dozens of monarch-level experts were all buried in the calamity. Saint-level. Monarch rank. If Diwu Qingru's words were true, then there would be many hidden powerhouses in the upper three heavens. When the Diwu clan was destroyed, several martial saints and dozens of martial monarchs died, and this was just one family. However, he would have to face all the ruling clans of the upper three heavens in the future. This was the fate of the Calamity Sword Master. Fuck. Chu Yang's heart beat wildly. My surname is Diwu. When I was born, my father named me Qingtian. Diwu Qingtian. Diwu Qingru smiled gently. It seemed as if he was talking about someone else's matter. The Zhuge clan's younger brothers are divided into two lines. Although we all cultivate martial arts, there is a strict rule. Cultivators can't be stained with blood. Use wisdom to conquer the world. Use wisdom to cut off karma. Diwu Qingru laughed. Although the Zhuge clan has many strong cultivators in the past 10,000 years, they can only use their wisdom to solve problems. They can't use their martial arts. In this way, under such pressure, all the Zhuge clan's cultivators try their best to develop their brains. Of course, they become smarter and smarter. I understand. Chu Yang really understood. He had to admit that the Zhuge clan's ancestor was really far-sighted. Such a decision was simply wise to the extreme. Because it could ensure that the Zhuge clan's intelligence would become higher and higher from generation to generation. Martial arts complemented each other. That is the only way to prosper forever. You only have extremely powerful martial strength and no wisdom. You can only be used as a tool in the hands of others. A person who didn't know a word could become a strong martial artist, but he would never become a wise man. This was the fundamental difference between a wise man and a martial artist. The overbearing way of martial arts is gentleness. Diwu Qingru said, every generation of cultivators is an outstanding younger brother of the clan. And in the clan, their status is also very high. So, after the clan chose me as a cultivator, they changed my name to Diwu Qingru. They used the name Qingru to remind me of my identity as a cultivator. Diwu Qingru smiled faintly. I see. Chu Yang nodded. Only now did he understand why a man like Diwu Qingru would use such a gentle name. 30 years ago, when the 10,000-year period was approaching, the 5 wise men of the Zhuge clan activated a secret technique. The 5 wise men exhausted their efforts and paid the price of the 5 men's lives. They clearly calculated that the next master of Calamity Sword was about to come out, but the fate of the Zhuge clan was not optimistic. So, they wanted to go against the heavens and change. Diwu Qingru said. Go against the heavens and change fate. Chu Yang was really shocked this time. It turned out that he was not the only one in the world who had this idea. Or it should be said that we need to follow the heavens' fate, but we need to borrow fate. Diwu Qingru thought for a while and finally slowly explained again, and this requires the fate of the lower 3 heavens to complement. Do you understand? Chu Yang nodded. It is to extract the fate of a country through a certain method to your Zhuge clan. If it goes well, it can continue for another 10,000 years, right? Yes. Diwu Qingru looked at Chu Yang in amazement. And this is the reason why you, Diwu Qingru, came to Great Zhao. Is that right? Chu Yang asked. Yes. Diwu Qingru said, simply put, it is to overturn the whole world with one person's strength. Moreover, it must be so huge that even the Emperor's dragon energy cannot suppress it. Then, through this person, the entire clan's wise men will set up a fate channel and extract it directly from the firmament with the power of the stars at the cost of this person's life and spiritual energy. This mission has fallen on my shoulders. Because once it is done, this person's life will be sharply reduced, and it is not impossible that he will die. The ordinary clan's younger brothers still care about their own lives, but I, Diwu Qingru, have the ambition to conquer the world. As long as I can unify the world in my hands, even if I die immediately, so what? How many years can a person live in this life? If I don't do anything, would I live up to my peerless talent? Moreover, at that time, I was also looking at the star's fortune technique. But I comprehended a strange technique that others can't comprehend, and that is the stargazing technique. I could accurately grasp the general trend of the world. Although this is limited to the Emperor's star technique, it was very beneficial to this plan. Diwu Qingru heaved a heavy sigh as he said this. So what if it is the Emperor's star technique? So what if it is accurate? The weather changes at the most critical time. So, my master and I came to the lower three heavens when we were 20 years old. My master vomited blood and died in order to set up a formation to absorb fate. But, before he died, he had a burst of inspiration, and adopted an orphan. That orphan was my junior brother. At that time, my master's last words were, "My junior brother will help me complete this task, and then he will die." Only my junior brother and I were left, and we depended on each other. I taught my junior brother wholeheartedly, and looked for opportunities. Finally, 5 years later, the weather changed, and Great Zhao became the master of the world. So, I came to Great Zhao with a bumpy road, and slowly worked my way up. My junior brother was always hidden in the dark, and when I had a firm foothold, he left me and went to Iron Cloud. Diwu Qingru's eyes revealed a trace of pain, but he was killed by you. Killed by me? Chu Yang was surprised. Who? Tang Xinsheng. Diwu Qingru looked at Chu Yang with a malicious gaze, and said word by word, "That was my junior brother." Chu Yang was stunned, and then his heart suddenly became cold. Because he remembered Diwu Qingru's words, "Before my master died, he adopted an orphan, and that orphan was my junior brother. My master's last words were, 'My junior brother will help me complete this task.'" This ability to calculate could be said to be heaven-defying. Chu Yang clearly remembered that in his previous life, Diwu Qingru dominated Great Zhao, and the most difficult bone to chew, Iron Cloud, was completely destroyed by Diwu Qingru and Tang Xinsheng. It could be said that Tang Xinsheng really helped Diwu Qingru complete his most difficult task. Diwu Qingru's master actually calculated this before his death. This made Chu Yang's heart become even more fearful of the Zhuge clan's wise men. They really had the ability to see through heaven's secrets. Diwu Qingru seemed to know what Chu Yang was thinking, and said casually, "You don't have to worry. This ability comes at the cost of one's life." His eyes revealed a hint of mockery. "There are many people in the world, but I have never seen someone who is willing to sacrifice his life when he is living well. So, you are also not willing?" Chu Yang asked sensitively. "I have ambitions and aspirations." Diwu Qingru was silent for a while, and then said casually, "But, I also have a family. And, I am only a retainer." Chu Yang let out a long "oh" sound. "You also know my origin, and you also know my identity." Diwu Qingru said, "So, I came here tonight to be open and honest." "Yes." Chu Yang admitted. "And, I guess that you will not fight with me for a long time in this war." Diwu Qingru's eyes suddenly became very meaningful as he said this. "That is not necessarily true." Chu Yang's heart moved, and he said with a smile, "Fast people have fast ways of fighting, slow people have slow ways of fighting. I don't care." Diwu Qingru chuckled and said, "Now, there is an opportunity in front of you to end this war in a very short time. At this point, everyone can write their own guesses in the book review. I need to draw on everyone's wisdom, so please feel free to comment." Chapter 398. You mean, tonight? Chu Yang's eyes narrowed. "I can see the Emperor Star technique." Diwu Qingru smiled, and this time, the Emperor Star shines in the world and stands in Iron Cloud. So, no matter how long the war lasts, the winner will be Iron Cloud. Even if I have the ability, I can't change the destiny. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and looked at Diwu Qingru in surprise. He didn't expect Diwu Qingru to be so frank. He said, "You can see the final outcome?" "Yes." Diwu Qingru smiled deeply. "That's why I came today." Chu Yang smiled. Yes, if Diwu Qingru was sure of victory, he wouldn't have come here today. "Tell me your conditions," Chu Yang said casually. "Now you know that although luck is illusory, it's very important to the clan. Not only does the Zhuge clan need luck," Diwu Qingru smiled meaningfully, "our Diwu clan also needs luck. Luck. Chu Yang pondered and said frankly, but I don't understand what you're talking about. You don't need to pretend to understand, I understand. Diwu Qingru smiled gently. At this time, the fighting sounds outside had gradually decreased. It seemed that the enemy was retreating. But Chu Yang didn't think about this at all. Diwu Qingru didn't seem to care either. It seemed that he wasn't worried at all about being alone in the enemy camp with hundreds of thousands of troops. After a long time, Chu Yang smiled faintly. You're right, but I don't feel at ease if I do as you say. Because I don't trust you. He stared intently at Diwu Qingru. Then, he smiled and said, unless you can give me a reason to be completely at ease. I'm here today to give you this reason. Diwu Qingru said calmly, luck is very important, and the Zhuge clan's luck is extracted from Great Zhao. But after this war, Great Zhao won't exist. He smiled meaningfully and said, so, the Zhuge clan won't be able to extract luck this time. Chu Yang nodded faintly, but his mind was spinning rapidly as he pondered. So, when the Tribulation Sword Master ascends to the upper three heavens, the Zhuge clan will be in trouble. Diwu Qingru said slightly, I don't understand. Chu Yang shook his head blankly and said, even if the Tribulation Sword Master appears and ascends to the upper three heavens, the Zhuge clan may not necessarily be unlucky. As long as these clans are modest and cautious, and don't offend people easily, it wouldn't be difficult for them to become friends with the Tribulation Sword Master. Even if they don't interfere with each other's business, the Tribulation Sword Master won't easily destroy a large clan, right? Ha ha ha. Diwu Qingru couldn't help but laugh. Minister Chu, if you can say these words, then it can be said that you are an upright person even though your wisdom is outstanding, and your conduct is strange, and your methods are sinister. Hey. Chu Yang touched his nose awkwardly. He really didn't understand why he would say that. The birth of the Tribulation Sword Master is a reshuffle of the heavenly layers. Diwu Qingru said casually, but why is there a reshuffle? This is the truth of the heavenly Tao. Why do you want to shuffle the cards? Chu Yang asked. He had a vague feeling that something was amiss, but he wasn't sure about it. Therefore, he decided to take advantage of this opportunity to get to the bottom of it. Why do countries and dynasties need to be replaced? Diwu Qingru asked back. Then he answered himself, that's because the previous dynasty had already decayed. So, it had to be eliminated. The heavenly layers are the same. Chu Yang nodded, that's true. Any clan that has been in power for 10,000 years will breed many malignant tumors, and these malignant tumors are often fatal. Yes, that's the reason. Diwu Qingru nodded deeply. The Tribulation Sword Master will never provoke the Zhuge clan, but the Zhuge clan will definitely provoke the Tribulation Sword Master. No matter how many times the family had given out orders, the things that were supposed to happen would definitely happen. And, once it happens, the Tribulation Sword Master won't be able to accept a peaceful solution. In the end, the conflict will only intensify and become more and more intense. When the Zhuge clan knows that the other party is the Tribulation Sword Master, things will have reached a point where even the heavenly Tao can't reverse it. Diwu Qingru smiled deeply and said, this is fate, and the Tribulation Sword Master is the origin of fate. So, things will never stop happening around him. He doesn't have to cause trouble, but trouble will always find him. Diwu Qingru's gaze was profound. Even if he were to sleep at home, someone would certainly tear down his house and force him to seek revenge, to seek justice, and to demand an explanation. And, this explanation is not something that can be achieved peacefully. It requires force. And, force will lead to death. And, death will lead to more and more problems. Diwu Qingru smiled mysteriously and said, do you know why? No, Chu Yang said honestly. In the heavenly layers continent, this is called tribulation, which corresponds to the word tribulation in the Tribulation Sword. Diwu Qingru chuckled, but in terms of techniques, this is called heart effect, and the Tribulation Sword Master is the heart. If the heavenly layers continent is a play, then the Tribulation Sword Master is the main character. Diwu Qingru's eyes were cold, and a sharp light flashed. He said insidiously, and the main character will never have a smooth journey. I see. Chu Yang nodded deeply and said, so, All these can only be described with one word, heavenly Tao. Am I right? Diwu Qingru laughed. Exactly. His sharp eyes swept around and saw Wu Qian. He revealed a mysterious smile and said, Minister Chu, let me give you an example. If you were the master of tribulation sword, you didn't do anything at home, and you didn't offend anyone. But suddenly, a lecherous young master appeared. And this lecherous young master kidnapped this beautiful Miss Wu. Let me ask you, would you let him go? Without waiting for Chu Yang to speak, Diwu Qingru interrupted, even if this lecherous young master has a dominant clan behind him, and his father is the leader of the number 1 clan, will you let him go? Chu Yang was stunned, and then he said fiercely, fuck. How can I let him go so easily? Wu Qian's face turned red. Isn't that right? This is fate. Diwu Qingru said calmly, it's called fate for ordinary people, they can only accept their fate. But it's called tribulation for the tribulation sword master. It's the tribulation of the big clan that the lecherous young master belongs to. Diwu Qingru had been talking about conditions and expanding the topic, but he didn't because Chu Yang changed the topic. But Diwu Qingru wasn't anxious or impatient at all. Instead, he tried his best to explain and dispel Chu Yang's doubts. This point was very bizarre. Diwu Qingru was patient and farsighted, but he shouldn't be so patient with Chu Yang. I see. The heavens revolves around the tribulation sword. Chu Yang let out a long breath. Maybe there's a ruler above the heavens, which is the heaven's will. But in this heavens, the tribulation sword is the ruler. Exactly. Diwu Qingru said solemnly. The two didn't speak for a long time. How do you want to cooperate this time? Chu Yang asked. This time, he took the initiative to mention it, which could be considered as returning the favor. When I came to the lower 3 heavens, I secretly learned the fate transfer channel because I was extra careful. I set up a small one myself. Diwu Qingru smiled and said, although it's small, it used up all the materials that our Diwu clan had accumulated for 10,000 years. Oh! Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. Of course, we didn't dare to compete with the Zhuge clan for Great Zhao's fate. At that time, I thought that even if Iron Cloud lost, it still had the noble emperor's aura. At that time, this noble emperor's aura would dissipate between heaven and earth. And the Zhuge clan obviously didn't care about the remaining fate of these losers. So, it was better to let our Diwu clan take advantage of it. What's more, such a small formation has a very small impact on my lifespan. It's only 30 years, and I can afford these 30 years. Diwu Qingru said, so, if Iron Cloud wins, our Diwu clan's days will be much better. Of course, I have to escape the Zhuge clan's punishment for my failure first before I can talk about other things. I see. Chu Yang took a deep breath. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. I didn't expect that Diwu Qingru had secretly set up this chess piece without anyone knowing. This guy really wanted to leave behind a backup plan no matter the situation. But this way, I'm also in danger. Diwu Qingru smiled bitterly, because I only planned to collect the remaining fate. So, I naturally set it up casually. But Iron Cloud is going to win. This is equivalent to Heaven's will playing with me ruthlessly. When the Tribulation Swordmaster dominates the heavens, if the Diwu clan really absorbs the fate of Iron Cloud, then I, Diwu Qingru, will disappear from this world. And the origin of this is the small formation I set up back then. Isn't such an outcome a joke by nature? It's unexpected. Diwu Qingru looked up to the sky and sighed. Chu Yang was also very surprised. He was just admiring Diwu Qingru's unpredictable methods. He didn't expect that things would turn out like this in the blink of an eye. But Diwu Qingru's life is worth it for the sake of my Diwu clan's longevity. Diwu Qingru insipidly said, but this time, the arrangement is indeed somewhat grandiose, because the formation of this destiny, especially this kind of destiny that can only be generated by the rise and fall of a nation, needs to have soaring blood energy. Soaring blood energy? Chu Yang was expressionless. He thought, no wonder Diwu Qingru started the war so quickly. But this time, I attacked openly and retreated secretly. This is somewhat superficial. You will see the flaw, and may not plan it. Diwu Qing-ru said lightly. This way, there may not be a decisive battle. If we retreat, then we won't have enough fate. Because Great Jiao will weaken day by day, and Iron Cloud will be like the sun. It will slowly prosper. When it develops to the end, it will become a gradual encroachment. Then, there won't be any battle spirit left. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.